Magical World War I. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26 Gorgeous University Black Moon Our 33rd Year Club. As a first-class clerk and the 37th rank official of the Empire, Charlotte has already entered the powerful class of the Empire, although she is only the lowest-ranking one. In Kilmainham Prison, no one can give him orders unless it is Mandelman, and no one can control him from being late or leaving early. Charlotte walked out of Kilmainham Prison and unexpectedly saw a carriage. This carriage was very familiar, and the little face looking out of the window was even more familiar than the carriage. Charlotte was slightly surprised and greeted, "Miss Anne. Why are you here?" And Brittany's pretty face was full of smiles, and she said happily, "I just happened to pass by. Mr. Mecklen got off work so early today, is there anything else?" And Brittany was a little uneasy. She actually came very early, but she didn't know how to find an excuse to enter this imperial prison. None of her family's relatives were inside. Charlotte smiled and said, "I just skipped work early. I don't have anything to do today," and Breton immediately said, "I just happen to have a private party and I'm short of a male companion. I wonder if Mr. Mecklen can help." Charlotte was no fool. The excuse of just passing by was really terrible. He was a person from two different worlds. This was the first time he encountered such a thing. He was actually pursued by a girl? And she was a standard white, rich and beautiful girl. And Breton was impeccable in terms of appearance, figure, temperament, knowledge, education, and even family background. Charlotte hesitated a little between going back to Sheffield University and dating Breton. She made a decisive choice and agreed, "It's an honor to receive Miss Anne's invitation." At the same time, she secretly thought in her heart, "The matter of writing a letter to my brother must be put on the agenda as soon as possible." Charlotte took Anne's carriage and left Kilmainham Prison. The private party that Breton was going to attend was the Gorgeous University Black Moon Our 33rd Year Club. Almost every country in the old world has this kind of atmosphere. Various small social groups are very popular. The lower class will have knitting clubs and laundry clubs, the main function of which is to recruit jobs. The slightly richer families will participate in reading clubs and cooking clubs to expand their network. Small clubs such as university clubs are already very high-end social gatherings. After all, there are only 4 universities in the Fars Empire. Each university is a place favored by God. Every student is a child of destiny. After graduation, they have a good job and a promising future. The place for this gathering is the home of a young lady named Belinda. She is Anne of Brittany's college classmate. The relationship between the two is not bad, but not particularly good. If it is any other time, Anne will refuse such a gathering. She does not like the hustle and bustle. This time, she accepted the invitation for Charlotte. After all, it takes too much courage to ask a man out alone. This kind of gathering does not seem so abrupt. Charlotte is worried about his future. He does not want his soul to be devoured by the maze, nor does he want to see Karnstein again, so he slowly runs bloody glory in the carriage to maintain his cultivation state. In the bloody vortex at the heart, several golden runes were looming. Because of the experience of facing the evil god of the Blood Clan, Karnstein, twice, his blood feast meditation technique has made great progress and has achieved subtle results. When the carriage stopped, he opened his eyes and felt that bloody glory had improved a little bit. And was observing Charlotte all the way. She keenly noticed that the other party was in a state of cultivation, which made her a little surprised and a little admired. Many people stop exploring the extraordinary after graduation. After all, this road is too difficult, but Charlotte still has the heart to work hard. His future achievements must be limitless. If he can become a high-level extraordinary, between us, I'm afraid there will be more possibilities. Miss Anne thought of this, and her pretty face couldn't help but blush again. Charlotte suddenly opened her eyes and saw Anne Brittany's face flushed and bright, and her eyes lit up immediately, but he knew what to say and said nothing. Anne was really a little shy. She lowered her head slightly and let Charlotte get off the carriage first. Then she stretched out her little hand and asked the other party to help her get off the carriage. A butler saw the two guests coming and raised his hand to signal. A servant helped the two to open the door. Although Belina's father also served in the empire and had an honorary title, he could only be regarded as a minor nobleman and could not be compared with a Breton family at all. Anne's arrival made the lady very happy and she came out to greet her in person. She was slightly surprised to see Anne holding Charlotte's arm. Anne was famous for being a cold beauty in school. She never dated any boys and never spoke politely to any opposite sex. It was also the first time she saw this lady from Brittany being so intimate with the opposite sex of the same age. Bellina used a small fan to cover half of her face, in order to avoid showing any excessive expression and making Anne unhappy, and in order to avoid losing her elegant manners, she chuckled and said, "Annie, everyone has been waiting for you for a long time. Can this gentleman introduce himself?" Anne smiled reservedly and said, "Mr. Charlotte Mecklin, graduated from the University of Sheffield, currently working at Gilmanham Prison, a first-class clerk." She walked towards the living room hand in hand with Bellina. In such public occasions, one's identity needs to be explained clearly, and one cannot be overly modest, but it is obviously not as appropriate for Charlotte to introduce herself as Anne. When Charlotte introduced herself to Anne, she did not emphasize her public office status, but highlighted the first-level extraordinary, in order to gain more trust from the other party. Now the scene has changed, and Anne adjusted the details of the introduction, hiding the identity of the extraordinary person and highlighting his public office status. Bellina's pretty face changed color slightly, and even the small fan in her hand could not hide her surprise. She whispered back, "Are you a first-level clerk?" If Charlotte introduced herself as a first-level clerk, Bellina would never believe it and would only think she had met a liar. 2 or 3 years after graduating from college, almost all people in the government are first-level clerks. A few guys with strong family backgrounds may be promoted to second-level clerks in advance. First-level clerks are really scary. Only children from noble families can have such a promotion speed. The gap between first-level clerks and first-level clerks is not ordinary. From the 41st level to the highest 37th level, there is a rare job transfer, which represents at least more than 10 years of promotion and training. Many civil servants may not be able to cross the threshold of job transfer in their lifetime. This change in status is not just 3.6 times the salary, but also a series of things such as status, treatment, benefits, power, etc. Bellina's father was only 2 levels higher than Charlotte in the government's civil service sequence. Anne smiled and replied, "Yes, Mr. Mecklin, I bought a house not long ago for less than 200 ecu." Bellina could no longer question it. To be able to buy such a house worth 200 ecu meant that Charlotte's salary was definitely not that of a first-class clerk. Charlotte sighed inwardly. He knew that this was the empire, full of snobbery, class, contempt, privilege, wealth and corruption. He still had to adapt for a while. Chapter 27 Fiancé. Anne soon became the focus of the party. Most of the participants in this party were students of Gorgias University, and they were all classmates who entered the same class in the 33rd year of Black Moon. There were only a few outsiders who were invited. As an outsider, Charlotte chose to be low-key. He sat down in the corner of the banquet hall and took out his diary to study. He now has 2 things that he always carries with him. One is the blood-sucking hand axe, and the other is the diary of his predecessor. In this occasion, it is not convenient to practice bloody glory, so Charlotte opened the side of the labyrinth of Agmaris. It seems that because of studying for a long time, he has also figured out a little bit of insights. When Charlotte was further analyzing the first Agmaris labyrinth, a man came over, showing his white teeth and smiled. "I am Andre, a third-year student at Gorgias University like everyone else. May I know your name? Are you interested in playing cards with us?" Charlotte smiled and replied, "Charlotte, graduated from Sheffield University. I am not very good at playing cards, still can't." Andre did not retreat, and then 2 or 3 young people came over and encouraged Charlotte to join together with Andre. Their warm invitation made it difficult for Charlotte to refuse. After a few excuses, she had to agree. When he sat at the card table with Andre, he felt something was wrong, but pretended to know nothing and started the first game with a smile. The cards that Andre and his friends played were called Teculo cards, which had a total of 144 cards. The best cards were the 9 Righteous God cards, which were also the only main cards that remained unchanged. The other main cards were different in each set, but most of them were famous figures from the old world, including kings, generals, famous scholars, strange evil gods, and various auxiliary cards. The gameplay was not difficult, but there were many doubling mechanisms, and often the winnings and losses in one round would be particularly large. For this reason, Teculo cards were only popular among nobles and wealthy people, and being able to play teculo cards was even considered a status symbol. Charlotte Mecklen was already good at playing cards, and after regaining her memory, she did not seem awkward at the card table. After 2 consecutive rounds, Charlotte lost 1 and 20 centimes, but he was not upset, but became more calm and composed. These young people were cheating. They probably heard from Bellina that Charlotte had a high salary and had recently purchased a mansion worth 200 EQ, so they had other ideas. However, when it comes to cheating, how could Charlotte, who graduated from the Department of Mathematics, be worse than this group of wildlings? Not to mention, he also has the eye of insight. After Charlotte played 2 or 3 games, he determined the greed of these young people, deliberately threw some bait, and then let the game go to a stalemate. Although he lost many times, he would have a lucky game every few games, and often he would make up most of his capital in one go. Andre saw that he had played more than 20 games, but the difference between winning and losing was not big. He was a little anxious. He signaled to several companions and said with a smile, "The winning and losing are too small. It's really meaningless to play like this. How about we raise the stakes?" Charlotte readily agreed. After raising the stakes, his luck seemed to be bad all of a sudden. He lost more than 10 games in a row and had lost more than 70 forts. When Charlotte showed that she was losing and proposed to raise the stakes, the young people were so happy that they agreed tacitly. But this time, Charlotte's luck suddenly turned hot. After more than 10 hands of cards, she not only won back all the money she lost, but also earned nearly 13 EQ and 6 fires. The young people were pale with defeat. They didn't understand why everyone worked together to cheat and still played the cards like this. After Charlotte won the last hand, she smiled and said, "Sorry, I have to take Miss Anne home. She must be home before dinner." This excuse is impeccable. After all, the rules of the Brittany family are indeed famous for being strict, and no one dares to stop Anne from coming home late. Charlotte got rid of this group of young people who love gambling and cheating, walked to Anne and said, "I wonder if I have the honor to take Miss Anne home." Anne smiled slightly and said goodbye to several female companions. When she left the banquet hall, she whispered, "Andre and his group are very annoying. They often lure people to play cards in school and cheat people's money collectively, but none of them have been promoted to extraordinary." At this point, Anne smiled cunningly. As a dream walker, she had already observed the card game over there. Charlotte looked like she had a sure win, so she didn't say anything to stop it. Charlotte couldn't help but laugh and said, "Miss Anne, you are very ladylike sometimes." Anne covered her mouth, but her eyebrows were curved and she couldn't hide her smile. She had been chatting with people all afternoon, and she was actually quite depressed, but when she saw Charlotte killing everyone and beating Andre and his group so hard that their faces turned pale, she immediately felt that today's party was also very interesting. Although Anne was brave, she didn't dare to let Charlotte take her home. Instead, she took Charlotte back to 58 Champs-Élysées before reluctantly saying goodbye and leaving. Charlotte watched Anne's carriage leave, feeling relieved. Although it took a day, he believed that it would not affect his ability to solve the current difficulties. If he couldn't solve the threat of the 2 evil gods in the end, it wouldn't be because of today's date. In the next few days, Manuel Mansume didn't come to work. Charlotte was never late, but she was happy to leave early. His dates with Anne de Breton were so frequent that they were shocking, and their relationship quickly heated up. In addition to dating, he didn't delay serious matters. He went back to school several times and consulted with several of the most knowledgeable professors at the University of Sheffield, but the professors were not familiar with labyrinthology, and there was still no progress in the research on the Agmaris labyrinth. As for the blood-sucking scroll, he didn't dare to mention it. Summoning evil gods would be subject to burning. He went to the University of Sheffield, which was protected by the goddess, and excitedly said that he had summoned the blood god. The professors would help him build a fire. Fortunately, the practice of blood glory was progressing day by day, and the date of the blood god Karnstein's return was postponed again and again, which made him feel a little relieved. The postal system of the empire was quite powerful, and Charlotte soon got good news. After his brother got a written promise to give up his inheritance rights, his brother attached a savings certificate of 550 EQ in the reply letter, and happily agreed to help cancel the engagement. His brother's reply also provided a piece of news that the fiancé decided to come to Strasbourg in person and sign a formal document of breaking off the engagement with Charlotte in person. The day after Charlotte received the reply, she had a very pleasant date with Anne, went to see an opera, and took a public carriage home. Charlotte walked leisurely into the alley. At the door of her house, she unexpectedly saw a very beautiful girl sitting on the steps of number 58. She looked a little disheveled, with some dust on her forehead. Her beautiful eyebrows were slightly frowned, and she was obviously in a very bad mood. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28, First Impression of the Fiancé. The girl was wearing a long maple leaf skirt that was common in the Fars Empire. This was the standard clothing for many women traveling far away. It was thick, windproof, and could hide many small things, such as a short dagger for self-defense. She did not carry any luggage with her. She was not as beautiful as Anne, but she was definitely a beautiful girl with a score of more than 85 points. Her face was slightly childish, full of collagen, and her delicate eyebrows were slightly clustered together. She was in a very bad mood. Charlotte compared his memory. Although the image was a little blurry, he was very sure that this lady was his fiancée, Sylvie Martin. Charlotte did not dare to take Anne's carriage these days and insisted on taking a public carriage home, just because he was afraid that this lady would see the scene in front of him. He shrugged his shoulders, strode over, and said in the gentlest tone possible, "Miss Martin, how are you?" Sylvie Martin regretted that she came to Strasbourg from the Principality of Behemoth alone. She should have traveled with someone. Strasbourg is much larger than expected, and the public security is much worse than expected. The first hour after Sylvie arrived in Strasbourg, she lost all her belongings and had not even a centime left. The address Charlotte wrote back to her brother was 58 Champs-Élysées. It took her a whole day to find the house by following the map. Sylvie was absolutely sure that she had found the wrong place. 58 Champs-Élysées was a mansion, and it really didn't seem like a place that her ex-fiancé, who only earned 1 centimes a week, could afford to live in, but she really had nowhere else to go. Sylvie Martin heard someone calling her name, raised her head slightly, and saw a familiar and annoying face. She said unhappily, "Why did you give me a fake address?" Charlotte did not explain, took out the key and opened the door, and added, "I live here now." Sylvie was so surprised that Charlotte called her twice before she followed him into the house. Charlotte didn't know why this fiancé hated her ex. Maybe it was because her ex had an immoral private life or some bad habits, but it didn't matter. He didn't come here to be a scapegoat. Although, Miss Sylvie Martin should still be a pure girl. Charlotte took Sylvie to the small study, motioned her to sit anywhere, handed her a glass of water, and asked casually, "Why don't you have luggage?" Sylvie replied angrily, "It was taken away at the station." Charlotte couldn't help laughing. He really didn't expect that this fiancé was so cute. Sylvie became even angrier. She bit her little white teeth and said with gritted teeth, "Can you stop laughing at me? You are more annoying than before." Charlotte nodded and stopped laughing immediately. It was indeed wrong to laugh at a girl, especially when he was not familiar with her. The ex had few memories of Sylvie Martin, so he was probably not familiar with her. Charlotte took out a document that had been prepared long ago, handed it to Sylvie, and said, "I have signed my name. I am waiting for you to sign your name, and the engagement can be cancelled. If you are worried, you can also go to the government office to get a notarization. I will pay for it." Sylvie took the quill pen angrily and quickly signed her name in beautiful cursive. Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief. He can date Anne openly in the future without worrying about the harem overturning. Charlotte carefully blew dry the ink on the document that belonged to her, put it in an empty box, and said with a smile, "What is Miss Martin going to do next?" Sylvie hesitated for a long time before whispering, "If possible, I want to stay for a few days. I will move out immediately after my father remits the money. I have completed the education of Behemoth National Academy and applied to become an imperial civil servant. I will receive a job assignment in about half a month, so I won't bother you for too long," Sylvie Martin said to the end with a firm look in her eyes, full of tenacity and courage. Charlotte was slightly dazed. He had often seen this kind of look in his previous life. It was the confidence that only independent and strong women had. Although, even in that world, there were very few such women. Charlotte shrugged her shoulders and said, "Miss Martin, even though we have broken off our engagement, I still have the responsibility to take care of you whenever you need me. You can rest assured to stay here. This former fiancé solved a big problem for him, and Charlotte did not intend to turn his face and be ruthless. Besides, this is a world in the Middle Ages. The public security is not good. He himself is a prison soldier, and of course he knows that even the capital Strasbourg can be as chaotic as it can be. Letting a young girl run around outside will make one feel guilty. If Sylvie leaves alone, something will happen. Sylvie Martin breathed a sigh of relief. She quietly touched the dagger hidden in her maple leaf skirt and said, "You can't come near me at night." Charlotte pointed to the stairs on the side of the banquet hall and said nonchalantly, "There are 15 rooms on the second floor. You can pick one at will. Besides, I just moved here not long ago. This house is short of a lot of daily necessities. If you need anything, please tell me as soon as possible. There is still time to buy it before it gets completely dark." Sylvie put down the water cup in her hand, pulled her skirt and performed a daily salute, then walked out of the small study and went up the stairs to the second floor. After a few minutes, she came down again and said, "I need a kerosene lamp, some clothes to change, and bedding. I'm still a little hungry. Is there anything to eat at home?" Charlotte smiled and said, "There are a few croissants, some stuffed bread, and some strongly scented tea at home, but you shouldn't be interested in them. Let's go out to eat. There are all kinds of shops on Élysée Pastoral Street." As the host, I should also welcome Miss Sylvie. Sylvie Martin was very surprised. She was not used to Charlotte's gentlemanly behavior. She knew what kind of role her ex-fiancé was. Charlotte Mecklen was a typical evil young man. He relied on his family's wealth to do all kinds of evil. He was even more familiar with flirting. He had ambiguous relationships with many ladies in Behemoth and was very unchaste. Sylvie Martin once believed that her ex-fiancé would not be able to get a university diploma because of a scandal in college. He was expelled from college, which was the right fate. This is also why Miss Sylvie insisted on breaking off the engagement. She doesn't like playboys and sluts. She can't imagine spending her life with such a scum. Chapter 29 Menelman's Transfer Gossip. Charlotte went out with Sylvie Martin without a gun, only a newly customized magic alchemy cane. This magic alchemy cane was simple in style, yet somewhat gorgeous. It was made of a very rare wood, light, tough, and flexible. It was inlaid with dozens of silver stars. These silver stars were obtained by melting the old scabbard from the Sherlock dynasty. When it was waved, it would emit a brilliant silver light, which Charlotte liked very much. It was certainly not a magic item, but was processed with magic alchemy to increase its toughness. No matter how tough the wood is, after dozens of silver stars are inserted, the probability of cracking is quite suspicious, but after being processed with magic alchemy, its flexibility is even comparable to that of steel. A good cane is not only a luxurious and handy weapon, but also a favorite carry-on item for gentlemen. It is very popular in every country in the old continent. Charlotte had a lot of money recently. She originally wanted to make a magic sword by melting the old scabbard, but after asking, she learned that the price was beyond her budget. She gave up making the magic sword and customized this magic alchemical cane, which cost her 1 franc and 12 centimes. Anyway, he was not good at swordsmanship, so there was no difference between using a cane and a rapier. Sylvie Martin left 58 Champs-Élysées with her ex-fiancé, still feeling a little uneasy. Charlotte chose the first restaurant she passed by, chose a seat by the window, and skillfully ordered 2 dishes. The cuisine of the Fars Empire is very peculiar. It is not a Chinese-style single-course meal, but a set meal on the menu. A dish will consist of staple food, snacks, side dishes, wine, dessert, soup, etc. Even if it is a very simple menu, a dish will have at least 5 foods, and wine and soup are indispensable. The restaurant was of decent quality. Charlotte ordered lamb chops, croissants, potato wedges, mushroom soup, sparkling cider, a few pieces of roast chicken and some vegetable platters. The portions were quite large, typical men's dishes. The dish he ordered for Sylvie Martin was mainly dessert, with cheese and a few biscuits, as well as a cup of milk tea, typical women's dishes. Charlotte was also hungry. The two of them ate in silence and did not talk. After the meal, Charlotte went to pay the bill and asked for a few more bottles of wine. His new home lacked everything, and he really didn't have any wine in stock. The sparkling cider he had tasted good, so he bought some more. As usual, Charlotte would not take the wine away on the spot, but asked the restaurant to deliver it to number 58, Champs-Élysées later. The two left the restaurant and soon found a grocery store. After purchasing what Sylvie Martin needed, Charlotte also bought 20 kilograms of kerosene. Recently, he often stayed up all night to study his diary, which consumed a lot of fuel for the kerosene lamp. After paying, he still asked the other party to deliver the goods directly and took Miss Sylvie back to his residence. Charlotte remembered that she was in love recently. Although her relationship with Anne de Breton had not been made clear, she still needed to prepare for a rainy day. He stopped Sylvie, who was about to go upstairs after returning home, smiled and said, "I have something to ask Miss Sylvie. I hope you can call me cousin during this period of time. You also know that there will be some criticisms for a single man and a single woman to be together, and these criticisms are more disadvantageous to you, okay, Cousin Charlotte?" Sylvie did not give him more room for explanation, and agreed immediately, and walked up the stairs quickly. The girl did not wrong herself. She chose the innermost and largest bedroom on the second floor. There were bright windows on 3 walls, an independent washing space, and a huge wardrobe embedded in the wall. The big bed left by the original owner was made of very solid materials. This was also the reason why it was too heavy and inconvenient to carry, so it was left in this house. For the young girl, this room was almost perfect, except for the slight fear caused by being too empty. Sylvie Martin stood in front of the south-facing window, looking at the scenery of the Lucavero River, and infinite courage surged in her heart. The girl clenched her fists gently and whispered, "New life, here I come." Young girls always have countless beautiful dreams in their hearts. About 10 minutes later, Charlotte knocked on the door gently and said, "The grocery store clerk is here to deliver the goods." Sylvie opened the door, and the grocery store clerk brought in all kinds of things and placed them where they should be placed according to the girl's instructions. During the whole process, Charlotte stood at the door and did not come in. He was very gentlemanly. This made Sylvie a little suspicious of this ex-fiancé. The original Charlotte Mecklen was not this kind of person. This was very unlike Charlotte. After the clerks moved and placed the things, Charlotte politely said goodbye to Sylvie. He sent the clerks to the lobby on the first floor, bolted the door, and returned to his room on the 3rd floor. Charlotte chose the suite on the eastern side, near the stairs. This suite has a bedroom, a study, a bathroom and a living room. From the living room, there is a terrace on the side of the Élysée Pastoral Avenue. This terrace runs from east to west and has a short wall as high as the chest. The entrances to the 5 suites are all on this terrace. The terrace on the south side is not connected. Each suite has an independent open-air area. Sitting on the south-facing terrace, you can enjoy the beautiful scenery of the Lucavero River while drinking tea. He lay on an old sofa left by the previous landlord in the room, silently calculating the wealth in his hands. "I originally had 5 écus in savings. I sold the long-headed flail and got 75 écus. I won 13 écus playing cards last time. My brother remitted another 550 écus. After deducting the 50 écus for the down payment of the house, I still have 593 écus. It's a considerable sum of money. Recently, the research on the Agmaris labyrinth has not been going well. Even the professors at my alma mater, the University of Sheffield, have no research on this overseas labyrinth. I should buy some materials or find an expert in labyrinthology." The next morning, Charlotte went to work at Kilmainham prison as usual. Not long after she entered the office, an unexpected person came to visit. It was Mrs. Pascal, the reception secretary. The lady brought a shocking news. She lowered her voice and said, "Ms. Menelman Sumri may be transferred from Kilmainham prison, resigned from the post of warden, and joined the army." Charlotte was very surprised to hear the news. After that day, Menelman Sumri never returned to Kilmainham prison. Although the first rose of the empire, the warden, treated him well, Charlotte was worried that she would not have to work overtime every day. She still hoped that the young lady would not have to come back for the time being. But there is a big difference between not coming back for the time being and never coming back. He is Menelman's direct descendant. Once this boss leaves, he will have no one to protect him, which is very unfavorable for his future. Mrs. Pascal was obviously not here to spread gossip. She stared at Charlotte without blinking, obviously waiting for his answer. Although Charlotte was not familiar with the workplace, she soon understood that Mrs. Pascal wanted to find out some news from him. The news that Menelman might resign as warden and transfer out of Kilmainham prison was just a test of the water by this lady. Chapter 30 Blood Flame. If it was the old Charlotte, he would probably tell the truth, but now Charlotte is not so honest. He smiled faintly and said, Maybe senior sister Mendelman will go to the Navy. Mrs. Pascal smiled slightly and said, maybe. She seemed to have achieved a certain purpose, and soon said goodbye and left. Charlotte stayed in the office for a while, handled some official business, and went home calmly after skipping work. He didn't have an appointment with Anne today, because Miss Brittany was facing the final exam. Even though she was talented, she couldn't ignore the rules of the university and couldn't go out these days. Charlotte took a public carriage to the Élysée Field Street, went to have a meal before returning to number 58. Since his spirituality was improved, his cultivation speed has increased by another level. During this period, Bloody Glory is about to break through, so he returned home and began to practice intensively. A few hours later, the bloody vortex at the heart produced unexpected changes. Countless tiny light golden runes were born, forming a wonderful structure, like a small golden heart. A new supernatural power was quietly born, Blood Flame. Blood Flame. It is the foundation of the secret method of the Adonis blood clan. It is also one of the 13 strange skills of Bloody Glory created by the great philosopher of the human race, Blood Flame Protagora. Blood-colored flames emerged from Charlotte's body, and blood-colored flames also emerged from the blood-sucking hand axe. The two blood-colored flames were remotely connected. After returning home, the blood-sucking hand axe hung on the wall flew up automatically like a tired bird returning to its nest and fell into the hands of its owner. Charlotte was surprised and opened her eyes. The blood-sucking hand axe circled around her hands, as if it was thrown out by an invisible big hand, as fast as lightning. The moment the hand axe was about to cut into the wall, the blood-colored flames burst out, and it was firmly nailed in the air. The axe blade vibrated and produced a slight tremor. Charlotte waved her hand, and it flew back to the owner's hand again. This is the foundation of the secret method of the Adonis blood clan, one of the 13 strange skills of Bloody Glory, and the basic function of blood-colored flames. Blood flame energy can burn the enemy's life and feed back vitality to the owner. It can also increase the lethality of weapons, so that there is an extremely subtle induction between the weapon and the owner, and it can be recalled at any time with the mind. In Charlotte's heart, what he was thinking about at this moment was definitely not recalling the weapon, but a combat skill that the great philosopher Protagoras of the human race had never thought of or developed due to his limited knowledge system, controlling objects in the void. Charlotte couldn't help but feel excited when she thought of the scene of herself controlling the flying axe to kill the enemy 100 steps away. The predecessor's swordsmanship was mediocre and not good at close combat. Charlotte inherited the shortcomings of his predecessor, and he himself did not like to fight with people. If he could control the blood-sucking hand axe with blood flame energy and fight the enemy in the air, Charlotte would immediately feel that he could do it again. The bureaucratic system of the empire favors the extraordinary. With the power of the extraordinary is more likely to achieve success and get promoted with the help of merit than ordinary people. Better than the imperial bureaucracy, joining the Orthodox Church, with a priesthood, you can get all kinds of privileges. Unfortunately, joining the Orthodox Church, you can no longer touch the secular power, and your life will be constrained by dogma, such as not being able to get merit for life, not being able to own secular property, which is very inconvenient. Charlotte did not intend to be a Western monk when he came here. He had a bond with the blood-sucking hand axe, and he had a little more preference for this weapon. He put the hand axe back on the desk and sat back on the sofa. After practicing Bloody Glory for a while, until 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Charlotte ate 2 croissants and prepared to go out for a walk. He originally did not plan to go out, and stayed at home honestly for a day. But Bloody Glory condensed the second superpower, which was also the foundation of the secret method of the Adonis blood family. It was the most powerful of the 13 strange skills of Bloody Glory, which made him emotionally agitated and unable to calm down. Going out for a walk is good for physical and mental health. Charlotte locked the door and turned into the Élysée Pastoral Street along the alley. This prosperous commercial street, which is 2,600 square meters long, is still bustling with people and cars at this time. At 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there are still 2 or 3 hours before the shops on Élysée Pastoral Street close. The Fars Empire does not have a street lighting system, so even the most prosperous commercial streets can only be open until the evening. Charlotte wandered around for half an hour and walked into 4 or 5 shops, but didn't like anything. He was about to go back after a while when he heard someone calling his name. He looked up and saw a slightly old but elegant and simple carriage galloping over. A beautiful girl with a slightly childish face was leaning out of the window and waving to him. It was his ex-fiancée, Miss Sylvie Martin. She was radiant and smiling like a flower, and it was obvious that she had encountered a happy event. These days, Sylvie Martin went out early and came back late. Charlotte never asked about her whereabouts. Seeing her former fiancé so happy, she couldn't help asking, "Miss Sylvie, what's up?" The carriage stopped beside Charlotte, and a lady got off the carriage with Sylvie. The lady was tall, light-footed, and very agile. She was about 27 or 28 years old. Her golden hair was tied up behind her head. She wore a women's hunting suit and carried a small and slender cane in her hand. She had a pair of lake blue eyes and delicate features. She was a beautiful girl who was no less beautiful than Miss Anne de Bretagne. Of course, she was definitely not as beautiful as Menelman Sumini. After all, this lady was nicknamed the First Rose of the Empire. No man in the Fars Empire would put other women on a par with her. That was a blasphemy that would cause a duel on the street. Sylvie introduced the two to each other. "This is my cousin, Sherlock Mecklen. This is the kind-hearted Miss Winnie, who helped me find my lost luggage." The lady stroked her chest with one hand, performed a standard imperial salute, and said in a comfortable voice, gracefully and confidently, "Winnie Arsenault, the president of the Cat Detective Agency. I heard that Mr. Mecklen works in Kilmainham prison. If there are cases involving related professions in the future, may I ask for your help?" Charlotte smiled slightly and replied, "Everything is fine. Please feel free to ask Miss Winnie if you need anything." Sylvie said happily, "It just so happened that Miss Winnie's detective agency needed employees, so she went to the city government to retrieve my file and transferred my work relationship to the Cat Detective Agency. Now I am a trainee detective." Charlotte was slightly surprised. Although he had already broken off the engagement with his ex-fiancée, he couldn't help but persuade her, saying, "Have you thought it through? The treatment of private employees is not as good as that of government civil servants. National schools mainly train talents for governments at all levels, but they also allow graduates to find jobs on their own. However, the treatment of private employees is poor, and few people are willing to give up the opportunity to work in the government." Sylvie Martin said, "I have inquired about it. I will probably be assigned to the countryside and become a third-level registrar. It is highly likely that I will not be promoted for several years." Chapter 31 Cat Spirit Detective. Charlotte was shocked and looked incredulous, shouting, "How is this possible? You are a graduate of Behemoth National Academy, not a public school graduate. You should be at least a second or third level assistant. Even a first level assistant is not too much. A fifth level registrar is really too much. How could you be a third level registrar? The registrars in the Empire range from level 49 at level 1 to level 45 at level 5, which is considered the bottom level of civil service. Granting it to a public school graduate is considered a preferential treatment, but letting a National Academy graduate hold this position clearly shows that someone is behind this." Sylvie Martin said calmly, "Nothing. Because I'm a girl." Charlotte wisely changed the subject and asked, "How much is the weekly salary that Miss Detective offers you?" Winnie Arsenault smiled and replied, 85 centimes, including accommodation and 2 meals. Charlotte nodded slightly and thought, "This salary is very reasonable, the same as the first-level assistant. Because it includes food and accommodation, the living standard is even slightly easier than that of newcomers entering the government civil service." Winnie Arsenault continued, "Miss Sylvie is a very good talent. It just so happens that an assistant in my Cat Detective Agency is getting married, so she has to resign, and there is a shortage of manpower. Although the Fars Empire allows women to work, the traditional forces are quite strong. Unless the husband's family is really ordinary and needs the woman's salary, they will ask the woman to resign." Charlotte said that he understood and he didn't intend to persuade her anymore. After all, she was already Miss Fiancée, and he couldn't control her so much. Just about to ask when the other party planned to move out. Then Sylvie said a little embarrassedly, "I haven't received my salary yet. Although I got my luggage back, I only got some items and the cash is not found. My father's remittance will take some time. I will have to pay you back for the money you spent on buying things yesterday later." Charlotte smiled and said, "You don't have to be polite with me." The lively ex-fiancé said, "Miss Winnie came with me to help move. I wonder if it's convenient for you, cousin." Charlotte smiled and said, "Miss Winnie, Cousin Sylvie, please come to my house to chat. It's too rude to do it on the street." He took the two ladies back to number 58 and invited them to the reception room. He took a bottle of sparkling cider and poured 3 glasses. He raised his glass first to indicate and drank it all. He smiled and said, The sparkling cider here is not bad. The two ladies can try it. After Winnie Arsino came in, she looked around. She raised her glass and took a sip, and asked curiously, "Mr. Charlotte lives alone?" Charlotte replied, "Yes." Miss Winnie didn't say anything else, but changed the subject and asked, "I wonder what Mr. Charlotte thinks about women's work." Sylvie said unhappily, "I don't want to quit my job after I get married. If the other party can't accept it, I won't get married." Charlotte, a modern man, certainly didn't have any opinion on women's work. He pondered for a moment and replied, "I hope women can be like birds, with the power to choose their lives as they please." A crisp and familiar voice came from outside the door, calling out, "Mr. Mecklin, you actually think so? That's great." Charlotte almost jumped up. He didn't expect Miss Anne de Breton to visit suddenly, and hurriedly said, "Miss Anne, please come in." At the same time, he introduced the two ladies, Miss Anne de Breton, a good friend of mine. Anne de Breton's pretty face was full of happiness and joy. In fact, she had always been worried that she would not be able to work after marriage and could only be trapped at home and deal with boring aristocratic social activities. Charlotte's answer just now gave her a lot of points. Anne pulled up her skirt lightly and gave a common lady's salute. Sylvie returned a common salute, and Winnie returned a standard imperial salute. Charlotte gritted her teeth and introduced Anne de Breton. "This Miss Sylvie Martin is my cousin. This Miss Winnie Arsenold is the president of the Cat Detective Agency. My cousin graduated from the National Academy and just came to Strasbourg from the Principality of Behemoth. She will soon join the Cat Detective Agency." Anne showed a slight surprise and called out, "Miss Winnie Arsenold? The famous cat elf detective? I have heard a lot about your deeds and have always admired you. I have also thought about working at the Cat Detective Agency after graduation." Seeing that Charlotte didn't seem to know about the Cat Detective Agency, she explained in a low voice, "The Cat Detective Agency is the only detective agency in the Empire where 70% of the employees are women. All female employees can learn cat elf magic after joining the detective agency. Miss Winnie Arsenold is one of the 7 great detectives in the Empire, known as the Cat Elf Detective, and the pride of all women in the Fars Empire." Anne solemnly performed a court salute to Winnie Arsino again. The court salute was a complete version of the daily salute, with several complex and very elegant gestures, unlike the daily salute which was just a gentle tug on the skirt. Miss Winnie smiled and said humorously, "I am just too free-spirited by nature. On behalf of the Cat Detective Agency, I welcome Miss Anne to apply for the job after graduation." After hearing the surname Brittany, she knew that this lady was of noble status and there was no way she could be a female detective. This sentence was just a common polite word. Anne also knew that her family would never allow her to be a detective who would show up in public, and she sighed deeply in her heart. The 3 girls quickly chatted with each other. After Anne knew that Sylvie was Charlotte's cousin, she tried to find out about Charlotte by making indirect inquiries. Sylvie was very considerate and even said a few good words for this cousin, which made Charlotte, who had been worried all the time, feel relieved. He sat aside and basically didn't interrupt, only occasionally acting as a temporary adapter, pouring sparkling apple wine for the ladies. About an hour later, seeing that the 3 ladies were still talking, Charlotte couldn't help but suggest, "Please allow me to excuse myself for a moment and go buy some sparkling wine and snacks. Our house is too simple and nothing is prepared. It's a bit rude to entertain you." Anne de Brittany and Winnie Arsino said together, "No need." The 2 beautiful women smiled at each other and suddenly had some tacit understanding. Winnie Arsino smiled slightly and said, "Let me do it. My cats are more powerful." She stretched out her slender right hand with 5 fingers and pinched a strange seal. Then she heard a disgusting meow. The cat spirit detective said in a doting tone, "Go to the nearby store to buy some sparkling wine and small cakes." After a long meow, there was no sound outside. Winnie Arsino said, "I asked my cat to do the shopping, so Mr. Charlotte doesn't need to work hard himself." Charlotte was full of surprise. Although he had obtained some of the memories of his original indigenous body, he really didn't understand what cat spirit magic was. Chapter 32 3 Kittens. P.S. Other authors don't ask for monthly votes, and they feel a sense of beauty in quietly rushing to finish their manuscripts. If I don't ask for monthly votes, it's like a sign that I'm going to give up, so I'll just ask for monthly votes. It will probably be on the shelves in May, and April is still the month of the public version. The few people didn't wait for a while, and there was a knock on the door. Charlotte went to open the door. Outside the door was a fat calico cat, holding a huge basket. The fat calico cat put down the basket and meowed twice, which was very arrogant. Charlotte also raised a cat on earth. He stroked it gently with skillful techniques. It purred a few times, jumped onto a nearby carriage with satisfaction, and curled up to take a nap. There were 2 carriages parked in the small square outside number 58 Élysée Country Street. One was Anne's carriage, and the other was Vinnie Arsenault's carriage. It was the first time he had such a lively scene since he moved into number 58. The visit of the 2 evil gods together cannot be counted. While he was amazed at the practicality of the magic of the cat spirit, he took the basket into the room and handed it to the 3 young ladies. Charlotte had seen Anne's mechanical beetle, but the mechanical beetle obviously could not buy things. It could only be used to notify the servants outside and then let the servants buy things. Winnie Arsino's cat spirit magic can directly drive cats, which is indeed much more convenient than mechanical beetles. Charlotte even had the urge to ask Winnie Arsino for this magic. Miss Winnie Arsino's chatting skills are very advanced. At this time, the 3 girls have begun to discuss a recent strange case. Charlotte listened for a while and understood a little bit of the situation. Recently, there have been serial disappearances in the Alcatraz area, and they are not single disappearances, but whole families. 7 families, a total of more than 60 people, have disappeared. The situation of each family was normal. It seemed that the family members had left temporarily. The house was not in a mess at all. There was no sign of thieves breaking in, but the disappeared people never appeared again, leaving no clues. In this era, the Fars Empire used the patrol army to take on the work of the police on Earth, but the case handling methods were rough and there was no professionalism. The case solving rate was even less than 3%. This also led to the residents near the missing cases not daring to count on the patrol army at all, but offering a high reward to the private detective agency. They were all very worried that one day they would be the missing population, so the reward was very high. Vinnie Arsino wanted to get the reward. She introduced the topic to this case and also wanted to use the wisdom of the 2 ladies. Both Sylvie and Anne were rare highly educated women in this era, but it was obvious that she was disappointed this time. The 2 young ladies had no clue about such a suspenseful case. Charlotte listened for a while, and he didn't have any ideas. Before crossing, he was a high school math teacher, not a senior criminal policeman, and had no desire to speak about this kind of missing case. And de Breton suddenly cried out, "Oh no!" We were too absorbed in the conversation. "It's time for me to go home." Vinnie Arsino smiled and said, "I'm here to pick up Sylvie to move to the detective agency's dormitory." "I didn't expect to chat for so long. I really disturbed Mr. Mecklin," Charlotte said hurriedly. "Don't bother me. I'm only happy and delighted to spend a wonderful afternoon with the 3 ladies." Anne left her seat, took Charlotte's hand, walked aside, and said, "I came here today to tell you an insider news." Charlotte was slightly surprised and asked, "What news?" Anne whispered, "Mandelman has been involved in a case recently. This case has a wide range of consequences. You have to be more careful." After she said this, she hurriedly said goodbye to him. It was indeed a little late. Miss Anne was a good girl most of the time, except, occasionally she would scare people in her dreams in the middle of the night. Sylvie went upstairs and took all the things she bought a few days ago. She actually had 2 large suitcases. With the help of Miss Winnie, the former fiancé got on the carriage and said goodbye to Charlotte. After watching the 2 carriages leave one after another, Charlotte returned to number 58, Chrysanthemum Avenue. Although he was always worried about trouble when Sylvie was there, he suddenly became alone and felt quite empty. Number 58, Chrysanthemum Avenue was really too big. Living alone was indeed somewhat indescribably empty. Charlotte couldn't help thinking, should I hire a cook? A few servants? Or keep a pet? Although he accompanied the ladies to eat some pastries, he was not full, so after a little hesitation, he went to the nearest restaurant near his home and ordered a set meal. After dinner, he remembered the Cat and Clover coffee shop he went to last time. Although the coffee of this era was slightly sour, it had a strong taste and was considered a good drink. It was much better than the strong black tea with a hint of pepper and pepper water, and more suitable for staying up late than the scented tea from Dungley. I decided to buy some coffee, not only for my daily drink, but also for entertaining guests. When Charlotte walked to the Cat and Clover coffee shop, she heard a very childish meow, and then she saw the half-grown Clever Cat looking at her vigilantly, and protecting 3 kittens that were born not long ago. Charlotte remembered that the last time she saw it, she thought the cat was fat. She couldn't help but smile and said, "These kittens are cute." The owner of the coffee shop was an older lady. She smiled when she heard the customer's compliments and said, "If you like, sir, you can adopt one. It doesn't cost any money. Just treat these little things well." Charlotte hesitated slightly, squatted down and looked at the three little guys. The half-grown clever cat seemed to realize that the man had no ill intentions and was not so vigilant anymore. It lay down lazily. The three kittens struggled to climb onto the mother cat's belly and began to suck the milk. Charlotte looked at them for a while and said, "I want a batch of coffee, all kinds. These three kittens are very cute. Please allow me to take them all away, but they are too young to leave their mother. Madam, please take care of them for a few more days. Here are 20 centimes, which is the food allowance for the little ones during their foster care." The owner of the coffee shop was slightly surprised. Her coffee shop's revenue was not very rich. It was already very difficult to raise a smart cat, so she couldn't keep 3 kittens. Charlotte was not only willing to adopt 3 kittens, but also paid the foster care fee, which allowed the kittens to stay for a while. For this lady, it was a great thing, and she hurriedly agreed. Charlotte was very happy to adopt a few little guys. In his previous life, he had some experience in raising pets, which made him know that cats should not leave their mothers too early, otherwise it would be difficult to raise them. So even though he liked them, he didn't take them away immediately, and planned to wait until the little guys were 1 month old. The purchasing power of 20 centimes, converted into RMB of nearly 400 yuan, was enough to raise these 3 little things for a long time. You know, the weekly salary of my ex-fiancée, Miss Sylvie Martin, was only 85 centimes. Because the coffee I bought was not much, Charlotte did not ask the shopkeeper's wife to deliver it, and just took it with her. Chapter 33, Dismissal Order signed by the new warden. For several days, Charlotte did not see Miss Mecklenburg again. He also heard some news, and there were even rumors that Miss Mecklenburg had been imprisoned at the bottom of the prison, but there was no reliable source for these gossips. Charlotte had just been transferred here and had no acquaintances in Kilmainham prison, so she had no way to inquire and verify these news. After leaving get off work early again, Charlotte accompanied Anne to watch an opera and took the Breton family's carriage back to Champs-Élysées. He said goodbye to Anne and walked back to number 58. To his surprise, he saw 2 prison guards outside his house, and they were familiar faces. Charlotte asked, "John, Tony, you 2 want to talk to me about something? It's so late. Could it be that Miss Mecklenburg has some instructions?" The 2 prison guards looked at each other and said together, "Warden Mecklenburg has been transferred." "Did the newly appointed Warden Mecklenburg ask you to come over?" Charlotte looked at the sky and couldn't help but said, "It's so late." The 2 prison guards said, "We can't help it. The new Warden Mecklenburg has a bad temper. He came to the prison in the afternoon and took a roll call. When he learned that you were not there, he signed a dismissal order. Maybe if you go back now, it's still in time to save the situation." Dismissal order. Charlotte was really shocked this time. He just left early in the afternoon. The new warden caught such a small mistake and wanted to dismiss him? This matter was not in accordance with the laws of the empire, but the empire was not a society ruled by law. Charlotte didn't say much, followed her 2 colleagues, and hurried back to Kilmainham prison. When Charlotte stepped into the familiar office, she saw no longer the beautiful senior who looked like a blooming rose, but a middle-aged man with a big belly, who was so full of anger that his oversized military uniform was bulging. Charlotte hurriedly saluted and thought, "Isn't this guy waiting for me?" A cold and sarcastic voice sounded, saying, "Mr. Mecklen, as a first-level clerk, you have been leaving early for a long time, and even disappeared for the whole afternoon on the day I took office. May I ask, are you suitable for this job?" Charlotte had nothing to say. He had indeed been leaving early recently, and that was because there was nothing to do in the prison and he had worked too much overtime. However, although the other party spoke righteously, the dismissal order had been issued before she came back, and he did not give her a chance to defend herself. Obviously, it was not because of such a small matter as leaving early. According to the imperial law, being late or leaving early would at most result in a salary penalty, and there was no reason to dismiss him. This big-bellied guy probably wanted to clean up the confidant left by Mecklenburg. Charlotte did not speak, which made the new warden think that he had begun to get scared. He was very satisfied with his intimidation and said with pretended anger, "I have removed you from your position as a first-level clerk chief, but as a new chief, I will give you a special favor and allow you to continue working in Kilmainham prison as a temporary prison soldier. If you are willing to work hard and correct your bad habit of leaving early, it is not impossible for me to restore your position, temporary prison soldier. That's not an imperial civil servant at all. Charlotte had worked in the central government office for 2 years and was familiar with the laws of the empire. He heard something wrong and his brain turned at full speed. The issuance of a dismissal order means the complete deprivation of the identity of an imperial civil servant. According to imperial law, the warden can issue a dismissal order, but it is impossible for me to return to the position of a first-level clerk unless an official 1 or 2 levels higher intervenes. He was so ruthless that he signed the dismissal order directly and fooled me that I could be reinstated as long as I worked hard. What exactly does he want to do? The new warden of Kilmainham prison, Magru Teller, thought he had intimidated this small first-class clerk. Of course, the dismissal order was issued. The other party was no longer a first-class clerk. Now Charlotte Mecklen was just a small person who could be manipulated at will when he wanted. Magru smiled and said, I believe you know how to behave. I want to know, what has Menelman done recently? What events have you been involved in? She specifically transferred you from the central government office. There must be something special for you to do. I want to know the details. Charlotte reacted immediately and thought to herself, is this a political struggle against Senior Menelman? Damn it, if a small person like me is involved in a political struggle of this level, I will die. Seeing that Charlotte was still silent, Magru added in a serious tone, you are now a temporary prison soldier, the person who manages those damned prisoners, but you can change your identity and become the garbage that is imprisoned. I also have a report here that says you borrowed 3 extraordinary weapons, kept them for private use, and did not return them to the prison. My patience is limited. Don't challenge my bottom line. Charlotte took a deep breath. Privately reselling extraordinary weapons is the unspoken rule of the prison. The unspoken rule means that it cannot be put on the table. The new warden brought up all this matter. He did not intend to give him the opportunity to choose sides, and he had to force him into a desperate situation. Since this matter has been turned over, even if he obeys the other party, his end will definitely not be good. Charlotte didn't know what kind of political struggle Menelman was involved in, but since the new warden would definitely not care about his life or death, betraying the senior sister would not have a good result. The most likely possibility is that the bridge will be demolished after crossing the river and die unclearly. What's the point of betraying? The only way is to choose the other side. Although, he didn't know what the fate of Menelman would be. Although he had a happy life during this period, as a traverser, he didn't think this kind of life was important. He didn't have the mentality of worrying about gains and losses like the natives, nor did he have the mentality of luck. Charlotte raised her head, which had been lowered, and said, I am willing to report. Magru hated the clear eyes of this young man, but the other party's words made him decide to give him a little patience, and said, Charlotte, temporary prison soldier, you are indeed a sensible person. He deliberately emphasized the word temporary prison soldier to increase the momentum of threat. The prison soldiers are at least imperial civil servants. But temporary prison soldiers are not even the lowest 53rd grade. Charlotte took a step forward, and a blood-sucking hand axe appeared in her hand with great skill. She threw it out with all her might, and shouted with a spring thunder, Warden Magru, don't try to force me to slander Miss Menelman. The moment the blood-sucking hand axe flew out, Charlotte urged the bloody glory, leaped back with all her might, and smashed the door of the warden's office with her back. Chapter 34 Escape. The office erupted with surging fighting spirit, and the blood-sucking hand axe was broken apart by the fighting spirit, and flew out after Charlotte. A person who could become the warden of Kilmainham prison might not have a good character, but he could not be a waste anyway. Charlotte knew this very well. His previous attack was just to delay the opponent, and he did not intend to kill the new warden. Facing the blood-sucking hand axe that was bounced back by the fighting spirit, he grabbed it casually and put it back in his control. Instead of running out of the prison, he turned around and rushed into his office, and he did not forget to repeat the words just now, Warden Magru, you can't force me to slander Miss Menelman, he shouted loudly several times. Magru was also slightly surprised. He knew that this first-level clerk had some skills. He thought that his hand axe, which was as high as level 7 fighting spirit, was enough to split the opponent in half, but he did not expect Charlotte to calmly take this weapon into his control. He didn't know that Charlotte had awakened one of the 13 special skills, the blood flame energy. which allowed her to manipulate blood-sucking weapons remotely, not just by skill. Magru roared angrily and shouted, "Catch this traitor!" Charlotte's bloody glory was only at the second level. Even if she had the two special powers of insight and blood flame energy, she would not be able to break out of the heavily guarded Kilmainham prison. However, his office had a large window, and outside the window was the street of the Marne district. As the outer 15th district, the situation in the Marne district was very complicated. As long as one could blend into the residential area, there was a certain probability of escaping. He rushed into his office, without any hesitation, and jumped out of the window. He rolled several times in the air to release the momentum. Although he fell to the ground in a mess, he was not injured. Charlotte quickly got up, activated the blood flame energy, and ran away. A few minutes later, a group of prison soldiers chased out, but the former first-level clerk was nowhere to be seen. Magru's face was extremely ugly. He didn't expect that such a small matter would go wrong. Many people must have heard what Charlotte shouted when she escaped. He had just become the warden not long ago, and had not yet been able to take control of all the power and completely control all the prison troops in Kilmainham prison. Someone must have leaked the news. Although he was instructed by a certain force behind the scenes to investigate Mandelman, he was secretly doing things. The other party had no evidence and could do nothing to him. He did not have the courage to openly break up with the Sumai family. If this news got out, he would definitely be in trouble, and even the forces behind the scenes might not protect him. Magru slammed the desk in the office. He could not figure out why Charlotte did not compromise at all, did not even hesitate, and even immediately came up with such a vicious counterattack. Roast him directly on the fire? He held a glimmer of hope and shouted, "No one is allowed to tell anyone about what happened today. If I know and someone spreads what I just said, I will let you all go to jail." Almost everyone who heard this near the office thought to themselves, the new warden is really going to frame Miss Mandelman. Charlotte escaped from Kilmainham prison, hired a public carriage, and rushed back to 58 Champs-Élysées at the fastest speed. In this era, there were no telephones or the internet, and the prison army and the patrol army were not mobilized so quickly. He still had a chance. Charlotte panted and broke into 58 Champs-Élysées, and turned out several savings union deposit slips hidden in the bedroom. He had offended the new warden, and the other party would not let him go, and the deposits in the savings union would be confiscated. He had made up his mind to escape for a while, and he couldn't do it without money. With the efficiency of the prison troops and patrol troops in this era, if Charlotte moves quickly enough, there is still a certain chance that he can take away all his savings and flee far away. Charlotte got the deposit slip and was slightly glad that he had not squandered much during this period. In addition to customizing the new cane inlaid with dozens of silver stars, he did not buy any valuables. Since he was preparing to escape, Charlotte was of course lightly packed. In addition to the savings union's deposit slip, the blood-sucking hand axe, the diary, the newly bought cane, and a few clothes, he also took the second-hand Magnum hand shuttle. After all, this thing is quite reliable for self-defense. After packing up his things, he was about to leave the house when he heard a noisy sound outside. Charlotte decisively gave up going through the main gate and rushed into the yard, then jumped over the wall with all his strength and jumped into the Lucavero River. As soon as he jumped into the river, a group of prison soldiers rushed into number 58, Champs-Élysées, and began to search with heavy leather boots stepping on the floor. Half an hour later, Charlotte climbed ashore from another place. The first thing he did was to check the savings union's deposit slips. Although they were soaked by the river, they were still intact. Charlotte didn't dare to delay any more time. He took off his clothes, wrung them dry, and ran to the nearest savings union office. When Charlotte completed the formalities, withdrew all his deposits and exchanged them for franc notes, he breathed a sigh of relief. With money in hand, such a huge sum of 593 francs, he was not so panicked even if he ran away. Although he knew that the 50-franc notes would attract a lot of attention as soon as he took them out, he still exchanged 110 50-franc notes. It was inconvenient to exchange more than 500 francs into small denomination notes. He exchanged the remaining 43 francs for 40 10-franc notes and 31 franc notes. Fortunately, he still had some change on him, so he would not attract attention because of shopping. After withdrawing the money, Charlotte was a little confused. He had not been here for long, less than a month at most, and was not familiar with the entire old world. As for the distant new world, even his predecessor did not have much information about it in his memory. I definitely can't go back to my hometown. There are too many people who know me there, and it is the easiest to expose my identity. How about leaving the Fars Empire? It's infuriating. I thought that after I traveled through time, I would have a good job and a beautiful and rich woman chasing after me. I would have a comfortable and rich life. How could it be like this? Charlotte thought for a long time and prepared to buy a set of clothes for escape. He still had a pair of thin-soled leather shoes on his feet, which were very comfortable and light in the city, but not suitable for outdoor activities or long-distance travel. As for the clothes on his body, he had to change into a set of hunting clothes, which was the most popular in the old world. Charlotte took a deep breath and was about to find an unfamiliar tailor shop when he saw two young men wearing black coats, with stern faces and scabbard swords, standing at the two ends of the long street, blocking his way. The two young men in black coats had a fierceness that came from having experienced life and death. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, The Fiery Horse Detective Agency. The young man with a cross scour on his face smiled slightly, revealing his white teeth, and said, "We have been targeting you for a long time. However, I think it would be more merciful to wait until you withdraw your deposit before arresting you. After all, this is your last wish before you die." Addison thought that even if there is a deposit certificate from the United Savings Association, it would be troublesome to withdraw the money without knowing the password, so he agreed to my request. Charlotte didn't expect that she had been targeted for a long time. She had no intention of using the newly customized alchemical cane. When it comes to close combat, he is a chicken. He pulled out the Magnum hand shuttle without hesitation and poured out all the bullets at the young man who was speaking. The young man with a cross scour on his face faced the muzzle of the gun calmly, pulled out the rapier, shook it lightly, and in an instant, he swung more than 10 swords in a row. More than 10 bullets cut in half fell on the ground with a clang. His swordsmanship was so amazing. The body of an ordinary person has its limits and cannot complete such high-speed swordsmanship. Charlotte took a breath and asked, "Superhuman?" A cold voice came from the other end of the long street. "Wells is a fortune teller. His unique skill is to predict the traces of bullets. You have seen it. It is very effective." Charlotte grasped the blood-sucking hand axe hidden in her sleeve and asked, "Fortune teller? Did you find me purely by spirituality?" The young man with a cross scour on his face said, "That's right, so don't think about escaping. No matter where you run to, you can't escape my divination." Charlotte threw down the Magnum hand shuttle without bullets and asked, "Who are you? Why are you targeting me?" Wells pointed his sword forward and replied, "We are detectives from the Fiery Horse Detective Agency. Our employer is from Kilmainham Prison. We are officially requested to assist in the investigation. The order given by Kilmainham Prison is that it doesn't matter whether the person is dead or alive, but it's better to be dead." Charlotte has always felt that the law enforcement team of the Fars Empire was not very efficient, but she didn't expect that in this world with superpowers, there is also the option of superhuman detectives. The president of the Wild Horse Detective Agency, Aubrey Tootin Atwood, is also one of the 7 great detectives of the Empire, and ranks above the cat spirit detective Winnie Arsino. The scale of the Wild Horse Detective Agency is more than 10 times larger than that of the Cat Detective Agency, employing more than 100 detectives, including more than a dozen extraordinary people among the official detectives, 200 or 300 detective assistants, a large number of trainee detectives, and various clerks. The scope of business is very wide. Faced with a pursuer who can tell fortunes, Charlotte is very troubled. He did not try to bribe the other party with money. The 2 detectives of the Wild Horse Detective Agency have already stated that they want to swallow the cash on him. It would be too naive to use this method again. Charlotte calmed down in an instant and launched the insight without hesitation. The holographic perspective covered the entire street, and the blood-sucking hand axe flew out of the air and chopped at another detective. The blood-sucking hand axe hit the target, making it all sound. Blazing flames appeared on the body of the detective named Addison. The blazing flames formed a whirlwind. The blood-sucking hand axe cut into the flames, but failed to break through the flame whirlwind and hurt the detective. Addison showed a cruel smile on his face and said, "I am the Flame Dragoon of the Fiery Horse Detective Agency. Your little tricks can't break my superpowers at all." Without seeing him make any movements, a flame rolled away the blood-sucking hand axe. The blood-sucking hand axe fell to the ground. The remaining force was not weakened. It bounced up powerfully and flew dozens of steps in the direction of Wells. Only then did it run out of force and fell on the street. Charlotte was slightly determined in her heart, but her face deliberately showed panic and shouted, "Third level extraordinary, the fighting spirit used by Addison is the specialty of knights." There is a saying in the old continent that knights are the most broad-minded extraordinaries and the easiest to achieve extraordinaries. The threshold is even low. Even a commoner has the opportunity to obtain a secret method of practicing fighting spirit. In the Fars Empire, the National Academy has a complete teaching system for knights. As long as you are admitted to the National Academy, you can learn the breathing method. The best students condense the seeds of power, awaken the life force, break out of the cocoon, and possess fighting spirit, and then they can get the title of knight. Even if you fail to enter the National Academy, many folk societies in the old continent will teach some breathing methods. For example, the flame dragon breath breathing method is popular in the Fiery Horse Detective Agency. With this method, you can awaken fighting spirit and call yourself a flame dragon knight. Charlotte failed to awaken fighting spirit in the National Academy. After entering university, she completely gave up practicing in this area, but she still knew a lot of common sense. From Addison's performance, he can judge that the other party's fighting spirit is about level 3, which is a level 3 transcendent among the extraordinary people. Wells held the rapier and strode forward. Lang smiled and said, "Choose me as your opponent. I am a fortune teller who is not good at fighting, and my strength is only level 2. From the information, Charlotte is just a civilian civil servant with no practical experience. From his performance, he is at most a first-level transcendent. Moreover, the bloody glory he is proficient in is a fighting style similar to Daoki, but with weaker power, which is well known to everyone." The two detectives from the Lima Detective Agency had a three-point gaming mentality and did not take the battle seriously, just like an old cat playing with a mouse, and were even a little lazy. Charlotte calculated silently, and when Wells stepped into a certain range, he said lightly in a voice that only he could hear, "Whether it is the East or the West, whether it is immortal heroes or myths, there has never been any divination that can be omniscient and omnipotent without paying a price." The blood-sucking hand axe that fell to the ground flew up leisurely like a nimble little bird, and chopped West's neck from a weird angle. Under the control of the blood flame, this evil blood-sucking weapon devoured the detective's blood and vitality. Wells stretched out his hand several times, trying to pull out the hand axe from his neck, but every time he raised his hand halfway, he was powerless and dropped it. In just a few dozen breaths, his vigorous vitality was completely devoured by the blood-sucking hand axe. The whole person was like a dead leaf in the autumn wind, withered in an instant, and his young and agile body became as withered as an old man in his twilight years. Addison's face was horrified. Faced with such a sudden change, he did not rush forward in the first time and missed the fleeting opportunity to save his teammates. Next, he made a decision that surprised Charlotte. His whole body was in flames, bursting with fighting spirit, and he ran away as fast as he could. Charlotte is a college student who has undergone a complete and professional study of supernatural knowledge at the University of Sheffield. When the two detectives took action, he spotted the flaws and designed targeted tactics. The two detectives from the Lima Detective Agency did not even get into the National Academy. They only had the opportunity to learn the breathing method in the detective agency. Although they are strong and have rich combat experience, their knowledge is much worse. They did not see through Charlotte's details at all. Although Addison knew about bloody glory, he did not know much about the 13 tricks of bloody glory. This method of operating weapons remotely was a supernatural power that only high-level supernaturals could possess in his cognitive system. Especially Charlotte took the lead and killed Wells in one shot. The appearance of blood-sucking weapons causing death and the momentum of the villain devil made this detective Addison misjudge his strength and choose the smart man approach, running away alone. Although Addison is an official detective of an official detective agency, his weekly salary is only 2 centimes, which is only slightly higher than a first-class clerk by less than 1 vor. Why would he risk his life for such a small amount of money? Chapter 36, Advancement to Level 3. Charlotte had no intention of chasing after him. He shook his head, walked to Wells, took out his wallet, and also took out a brand new Magnum handspike and a cowhide bullet bag from the detective. As for the other party's rapier, although it looked valuable, he did not take it. First, He was not good at swordsmanship, and second, it was not easy to get rid of it during the escape. Charlotte also picked up her second-hand magnum handspike, and then walked away. Having devoured the vitality of Wells, a second-level extraordinary, he needed to find a place to digest it. After Charlotte left, the whole street gradually became crowded again. This kind of street murder is common in small places, even in the capital Strasbourg. There are not even any pedestrians who intend to report to the patrol army. Instead, someone kindly notified the municipal body collector. Wells's death was too hideous, which made the nearby residents very uncomfortable. This must be cleaned up. Charlotte did not leave directly. He turned back to the upper 7th district, hurriedly passed through the central city of Strasbourg, and entered the Franche-Comté district, which was far away from the Marne district across the city center. Although he had no experience in counter-reconnaissance, he had seen many similar posts on the internet in his previous life, which could confuse the pursuers to some extent. As long as he left the upper 7th district, the prison army would generally not catch up, and the strength of the patrol army would become weak. If he was misled and searched in the direction of the Marne district and the Lucavero district, it would be safer. Although there were also garrisons in the outer 15th district, they were generally not very interested in such a small case. He was not worried about the whole city search. He had a falling out with a new warden. It was a personal grudge and there was no clear crime. Even if the crime was confirmed, because his status was too low and it was not a big case, how big a crime could it be to resell the extraordinary weapons in the prison? It was not enough to cause such a big scene. The Empire did not have so many patrol troops to squander. This is really not Earth. Although Charlotte works in the Marne district, when she entered the Franche-Comté district, she could still clearly feel the difference between the outer city and the upper 7th district. It was dirtier and messier, the buildings were more messy, and the people walking on the street had no expression on their faces. It was obvious that they were under too much pressure in life and had no vitality at all. He had no time to sigh like a time traveler. He hurriedly found a decent tailor shop, entered the shop, and said straight to the point, "I'm going on a long journey, and I need a set of durable clothes." This tailor shop called Wild Lily has only one old tailor, and he doesn't even have an assistant. The old tailor glanced at Charlotte and said lightly, "It will take 5 days." Charlotte smiled and said, "I want it now, and I'll add 30% to your price." The old tailor said slowly, "There are indeed a few sets of finished clothes, but they are not suitable for your size, so they need to be altered." Charlotte said, "Then please do it as soon as possible." The old tailor brought a few finished clothes in the store. Charlotte chose a pair of calfskin boots, a thick hunting suit, and bought a suitcase that had been in the store for a long time. He was going on a long journey, but he would look out of place without any gifts. The old tailor's craftsmanship was good, and he altered the clothes in about half an hour. When paying, Charlotte chose to mortgage her old clothes to the old tailor. The clothes he was wearing were all made in a tailor shop in the upper 7th district. They were made of good materials. Although they were not high-end and were second-hand goods, they were more expensive than the clothes in the old tailor shop. The old tailor was honest in doing business. He estimated a suitable price and gave Charlotte 2 centimes in change. The two of them happily completed the transaction. Although he had wrung it dry, Charlotte was still a little wet and uncomfortable. He borrowed a towel from the old tailor, wiped his body, changed his clothes, and immediately felt much refreshed. Carrying his cane and a newly bought suitcase, he walked out of the tailor shop and suddenly remembered that not long before he traveled here, there was a robbery in Hangzhou Mixk. The criminals didn't even last 10 minutes before they were arrested by the police uncles. Compared with the efficiency of handling cases on Earth, the prison soldiers and patrol soldiers of the Fars Empire might not even be able to compare with the foot hair. Of course, he didn't want the efficiency of handling cases in the Fars Empire to suddenly improve. Encountering a fortune-teller detective was enough for him. Charlotte walked for a while and found a public carriage. After he got on the carriage, he gave the coachman the address of a famous manor outside the city. He was not going to the manor, but it was far enough away. It would take at least 5 or 6 hours to get there. Such a long time was enough to digest the life force he had swallowed. As a second-level extraordinary, Wells had an extremely strong vitality. The bloody glory in his body was about to explode. The coachman was ecstatic. This was a good job. He immediately urged the horse pulling the carriage to get on the road. Charlotte adjusted his breathing, circulated the bloody glory in his body, and began to refine the life force he had swallowed. A few hours later, His left leg shook violently, and the third bloody vortex condensed into shape. Although he was on the run, Charlotte was still slightly happy. According to the normal progress of cultivation, even a genius like Miss Anne would have to graduate 5 or 6 years before he could be promoted to the third level. He opened his hands, and the bloody glory gushed out in his palms, which was at least 3 or 4 points stronger than before. After a brief attempt, Charlotte restrained the bloody glory and thought to himself, I wonder when I can condense the bloody vortex on my right leg and successfully meditate on the 2 runes of agility and spirit spider. He chose to condense the bloody vortex on his legs in the hope that he could meditate on these 2 magic runes as soon as possible. The agility technique can make a person as light as a swallow, as fast as a galloping horse, as agile as a monkey, and as flexible as a Suzuka. The spirit spider technique can make a person fly over eaves and walls, climb mountains and cross ridges as if on flat ground, and even condense spiritual power threads to escape into the air, with a little bit of special stress inspiration. Once he has mastered these 2 magic techniques, his body movements and running speed will no longer be at the level of ordinary people. Even if he encounters a high-level extraordinary person, he can escape calmly, and he is not afraid of ordinary pursuit. After Charlotte digested the life essence she had swallowed, she finally had the energy to turn out Wells' wallet. This detective must have just received a reward from the new warden, Magru Teller. There was a huge amount of 5 écus in his wallet, and a few francs of change. The purchasing power of 1 écu is equivalent to 18,000 or 19,000 RMB. Magru's move was considered generous. There was also a delivery note in the wallet, which said a rapier. Charlotte guessed that this detective, who was good at swordsmanship, ordered a new weapon but had not yet taken it back. He collected the cash and the delivery note, and threw the wallet out of the window. At this time, the carriage had left the city, and there were wilderness on both sides of the road. The wallet rolled into the grass and would probably never be found again. Chapter 37 Great Axe Adventure Group. When the carriage passed a village, Charlotte left the fair, got off the carriage quietly without disturbing the coachman. Watching the carriage gallop away, Charlotte relaxed a little. He didn't want to go to the manor in the first place. After digesting the life essence he swallowed, he chose to slip away halfway, which would make it more difficult for the pursuers to figure out his whereabouts. This village has a small population, probably only dozens of households, and a small street runs through the entire village. It was already dark at this time. Although Charlotte was extraordinary, she didn't dare to travel in the wilderness in the middle of the night. The wilderness of this world is not safe. Even near the capital Strasbourg, there are cannibalistic demons, ferocious beasts, and various inexplicable dangers. Charlotte tried to knock on the doors of 2 villagers. The first one gave a rude voice and rejected his request for accommodation. The second one was much easier to talk to. Although it also rejected him, it directed him to the home of Old John at the head of the village. Old John was a hunter and occasionally did some business of hosting strangers. When Charlotte found the old hunter's house, it was already completely dark. He knocked on the door and asked for a place to stay. A tall and strong old man opened the door and said, "Come in." What surprised Charlotte was that the old hunter was not alone. There was a small adventure team in his room. The team had 5 people, 3 men and 2 women. The leader was a middle-aged warrior who used a giant axe. He was very alert and did not speak to Charlotte. The other 2 men were slightly younger, in their 30s, with sabers hanging from their waists. Razors are great weapons in street duels, but in the wild and in the army, sabers with thick spines are common weapons. These 2 people were obviously experienced adventurers. In addition to weapons, they had a lot of miscellaneous items on them. They looked at Charlotte with a bit of caution. Both ladies were very young and of average appearance. One was a typical Frisian with outstanding wavy blonde hair, and the other probably had some southern ancestry from the old world with short brown hair. Both women were in their early 20s, not much older than Sylvie. The public academy teaches various martial arts, and the National Academy teaches breathing techniques. Even women can develop good skills. For example, Charlotte's ex-fiancée, Miss Sylvie Martin, is better at swordsmanship than him. Many women choose to give up government work after graduation and become adventurers with their skilled martial arts or knowledge from formal training. Because, the empire does have some gender discrimination in job allocation. Sylvie was sent to the countryside to work as a registrar, which is not an exception. Other countries in the old continent are not much better. The blonde young lady was very interested in Charlotte and asked, "Are you going to Yorktown for the White Wolf as well?" Charlotte smiled and said, I was just passing by and didn't hear about the white wolf. What kind of beast is that? Several adventurers laughed. The blonde young lady said, the white wolf is not a beast. He is the best demon hunter and is very good at killing demons. Recently, he spread the word that he got the hardcore of a demon and wanted to choose a successor. Charlotte was slightly surprised. Demon hunter is a supernatural profession with a very wide range of employment. Whether it is being employed by the government, being hired by nobles, or being hired by merchants, or even going it alone, it is a good choice. It is very profitable and a super high-paying industry. He has 2 college classmates who chose the demon hunter profession. Before graduation, they successfully opened the supernatural and became demon hunters. Now they earn at least 10 foils a week, which is very enviable. However, although the demon hunter has a wide range of employment prospects, this extraordinary profession has 2 major flaws. Employment requires the hardcore of a demon, which is very rare and extremely expensive, and ordinary people can't find it at all. Facing demons requires fighting all the time. Although the income is lucrative, it is also extremely dangerous. Charlotte had considered whether to choose to be a demon hunter, but finally chose Bloody Glory, because he really didn't have much talent for fighting. After glancing at the 5 adventurers, Charlotte immediately judged that none of the 5 people had been promoted to extraordinary. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind and said with a smile, I have no interest in becoming a demon hunter, but I am very curious about this visit. I wonder if I can go with you. Don't worry, I won't compete with you for the opportunity to become a demon hunter, because, Charlotte gently pinched his fingers, and the air made a slight crackling sound. He smiled and said, I have taken the path of a knight and am already an extraordinary. Of course, Charlotte doesn't know how to fight, and his power seed is still a seed, but it is not difficult to simulate fighting with Bloody Glory. After all, Bloody Glory is similar to fighting. The 5 adventurers were immediately moved. The middle-aged warrior with a giant axe hesitated for a moment and said, My name is Mason. Welcome to join the Giant Axe Adventure Group. The other 2 slightly younger men also gave their names. The blonde lady was called Hannah, and the short brown-haired lady was called Himansha. It was a name that was indeed a bit like the customs of the southern part of the old world. This name was a bit weird for the authentic Fars Empire people. Charlotte couldn't give his real name. He got inspiration from Himansha's name and made up a name that was also a bit like the customs of the southern part of the old world, Jin Nan. A person alone is still quite eye-catching and easy to be found by pursuers, but if he acts with an adventure team, no one will notice him and he can better hide his identity. After joining the Great Axe Adventure Group, Charlotte threw out a copper centime and called out, Mr. Old John, do you have any wine? I'll buy a drink for my teammates. The centime coins of the Fars Empire are dark red in color and look very much like copper coins. They are also considered to be copper coins, but they are actually an alloy. Charlotte doesn't know the formula of this copper coin, but it is very wear resistant and not easy to deform or fade. Old John grabbed the copper coin and said lightly, 1 centime is not enough. Charlotte shrugged her shoulders and threw out 2 more centimes. Old John grabbed the copper coin and turned to get the wine. Charlotte knew that 1 centime was not enough to buy wine, but she deliberately created an image that he was not very rich, but very generous. Although poor, but generous, it is easy to distinguish him from the former first-level clerk who has a high salary and few friends, and the former first-level clerk chief. Old John quickly brought over 6 large cups of beer and handed them to the 6 people. Mason took the beer and immediately developed a great liking for Charlotte. He shouted, Chen Nan. You are the best new member I have ever seen. He raised his glass and took a sip, with an indescribable satisfaction on his face. Charlotte raised her glass and clinked it with the other 4 team members, and also took a sip. Old John's beer was much worse than the sparkling cider he usually drank. It was slightly bitter and tasted more like beer, but the alcohol content was obviously much higher than beer. Chapter 38 Yorktown. The Great Axe Adventure Group was obviously not a wealthy group, and they rarely had spare money to buy wine. Charlotte invited them to drink. Not to mention the 3 male team members, even the blonde Hannah and the short brown-haired Himansha were very happy. Old John also sent a piece of roasted wild boar elbow as a gift for Charlotte's wine purchase. Everyone used a knife to cut a thin slice to accompany the wine, and the atmosphere soon became warm. More than 2 hours after Charlotte entered the village, a team of 7 people also entered the small village. These people wore the same black coats as Wells and Addison. This is the iconic clothing of the Wild Horse Detective Agency. These black coats have extremely strong waterproof and windproof properties, and can even withstand some sword stabs. There are also multiple hidden pockets inside the coats, which are very convenient for long-distance travel. Winterbourne said, "It's getting late. We can't go on. Let's stay in this village for one night." Addison, go ask who in the village can stay for the night. Winterbourne was the leader of this team. He was 48 years old this year, a fourth-level extraordinary, and a middle-level cadre of the Fiery Horse Detective Agency. He was well known among his peers and had great prestige in the detective agency. Addison left in a hurry and came back soon, saying, "You can stay at Old John's house at the end of the village." The team quickly took action. When they knocked on the door of Old John's house, Charlotte, who had already fallen asleep, was awakened by the sound. He immediately turned on his inside and covered Old John's entire house. Fiery Horse Detective Agency? How did they catch up? Charlotte was shocked and hesitated for a moment. He did not run away immediately. If he made any move at this time, it would be tantamount to confessing. This team of the Fiery Horse Detective Agency obviously did not realize that the target they were chasing was right under their noses. Winterbourne asked if the previous lodging was an adventure group, so he didn't say anything more. He asked for some food, ate with the detectives in a hurry, and slept in another room under the arrangement of Old John. Charlotte didn't dare to sleep anymore. He closed his eyes and slowly ran Bloody Glory, and survived until dawn with great difficulty. The people from the Fiery Horse Detective Agency set off at dawn. Charlotte was greatly relieved. After a while, the people from the Great Axe Adventure Group woke up one by one. After all, they were an adventure group, so they still had basic vigilance. They knew that another group of people came last night, but the other party did nothing, so they didn't react. Charlotte got together with everyone, had a simple breakfast, and set off for Yorktown. Charlotte felt a little uncomfortable. He rarely walked in Strasbourg and had long been accustomed to taking a public carriage. This time he had to walk the whole way to Yorktown because the road was all mountainous and the carriage couldn't go at all. Even if it could go, the Great Axe Adventure Group would not hire a carriage because it was too expensive to hire a carriage outside the city for a long journey. Although she was promoted to the third-level extraordinary, Charlotte still felt very tired. She thought to herself, "I have to work harder to cultivate and condense the bloody vortex on my right leg. And cultivate the runes of the light and spider arts as soon as possible, or I can buy a carriage and drive myself." The team led by Winterbourne had arrived at the manor that Charlotte had designated yesterday. They stayed in the manor for more than an hour, asked around, and confirmed that Charlotte was not there. Then they continued to set off and chased along a road. Although there were many detectives in the Wild Horse Detective Agency, there was only one extraordinary person like Wells who took the path of a fortune teller. Before they set off, they asked a wizard to try to track down Charlotte. The wizard only gave directions without too many details. Charlotte didn't know that she had escaped for the time being. While complaining secretly, she finally arrived in Yorktown. This is a big town with nearly 1,000 people. The famous demon hunter White Wolf built a huge wooden house with logs in the center of the town. There are already 40 or 50 people in front of the wooden house, divided into more than 10 small teams whispering to each other. The arrival of the Great Axe Adventure Group has been unanimously hostile. After all, there is another group of competitors. Charlotte has been very familiar with the 5 teammates along the way. He knows that it is the leader Mason who wants to become a demon hunter, and the other 4 team members are here with him. As a bottom-level adventure group, they have all learned some breathing methods, but only Mason and Himengsha have condensed the seeds of power. Himengsha is younger and has a chance to break through. Mason is over 40 years old, and it is difficult for him to break out of the cocoon and become a knight with fighting spirit. Hannah is very interested in Charlotte, but it is this blonde girl who chats with him the most along the way. Charlotte knows why. He has shown extraordinary cultivation and is a knight with fighting spirit. For Hannah, it is a good dating partner. Of course, the priority is that Charlotte is quite handsome. Otherwise, he would not have won the favor of Anne of Brittany. After all, the result of a hero saving a beautiful woman is sometimes to be married with one's body, and sometimes to be married in the next life. The Giant Axe Adventure Group took a seat in front of the giant wooden house. Mason went to ask an acquaintance and came back to say to everyone, "The White Wolf will not appear tonight. He is still a day's journey away and will not be back until tomorrow. Most people have found a place to stay in the town. These people can't find a place to stay, so they stay here. I'm afraid we will have to camp here tonight. Except for Charlotte, the other 5 people have experience living in the wild, not to mention that the open space in the town is much safer than the real wild. Several people quickly made a small fire, sitting or lying, and resting for a while to relieve the fatigue of a day's journey. Charlotte had no interest in becoming a demon hunter, and Hannah didn't think she had a chance. When Hannah suggested that the two of them find a place to have a drink, Charlotte readily agreed. What he didn't expect was that Mengsha wanted to go with him. Charlotte said hello to the leader, Mason, and left with the 2 girls, which made the other 2 male teammates complain. Although Charlotte had been traveling for a whole day, he was at least a 3rd-level extraordinary person. He relieved most of his fatigue by running bloody glory. The 2 ladies obviously didn't have his ability. The tiredness on their faces could no longer be concealed. Charlotte found 2 hotels in Yorktown, but both were full. There were too many adventure teams in the past few days. He didn't go to the 3rd one. He simply bought a lot of food and a large barrel of beer at the 2nd one, took the 2 girls, and went back to the giant wooden house. When Charlotte shared the food and beer with the team members, the slight unhappiness of the 2 men just now disappeared. After Hannah came back, she ate a little, and then fell asleep with her backpack as a pillow. Mengsha was a little better and chatted with everyone for a while, but she seemed to be a little exhausted. Mason and the 2 male teammates were not much better either. Charlotte simply suggested that he guard the first half of the night and everyone would take turns in the second half. Even in the town, you still need to keep watch. Chapter 39 An Unexpected Acquaintance. The long journey was very tiring. Everyone was too tired to drink much beer. They ate a little and fell asleep. There was still half a barrel left. Charlotte leaned against her suitcase, took out her diary, and turned on her supernatural insight. While pondering the first Agneris maze, she was alert to anyone who might come to tamper with it. She poured herself a glass of beer and drank it with the jerky she had just bought. She felt quite comfortable in the night breeze. Although there were many people outside the giant wooden house of the White Wolf, it was quite quiet. There were snoring sounds from time to time, which added to the tranquility. When the sky was slightly brighter, Charlotte felt that his spiritual energy had been consumed a lot. He turned off his insight, rubbed his eyes, looked around, and was considering which companion to wake up to replace him when he heard noisy footsteps and a group of people came in from outside the town. Soon the team arrived in front of the giant wooden house. The 2 people in the lead, one was tall, more than 2 meters tall. Even on Earth, or even in Strasbourg, such a tall person is rarely seen. He carried a huge sword on his back and a pair of meteor hammers on his waist. The other person, Charlotte unexpectedly recognized, was the merchant Louis Simi, who she had met at the auction of magic items of Duchess Misu. The 2 had also done a multi-headed flail business. Charlotte was slightly surprised, but soon figured it out. Louis Simi seemed to have just returned from afar, and he must not know what happened in Strasbourg recently. This is not the information age. Even the most explosive news spreads very slowly. Instead of deliberately avoiding it, it is better to take the initiative to talk to him. As for whether Louis Simi would report him when he returned to Strasbourg. Firstly, this matter involves a lot of things. A shrewd businessman like Louis will definitely weigh the pros and cons. Secondly, by then he would have already fled far away. Charlotte stood up and walked towards the team. She nodded slightly to the senior Witcher White Wolf, then opened her arms to Louis Simi and said, "Louis, I didn't expect to see you here. I'm Jinnan. We had a chat last time at the auction of magic items held by Duchess Misu." Louis Simi was slightly surprised, but as a successful businessman, he did not ask a bad question like "You seem to be called Charlotte Mecklen last time." Instead, he smiled and said, "Life is wonderful. Do you want to be a witcher too?" The 2 hugged each other and put their cheeks against each other. These are 2 formal etiquettes that only men with a deep friendship would observe. Charlotte smiled and said, "I can't take the second extraordinary path, otherwise I would be reluctant to give up such a good opportunity." The 2 chatted for a while, and Louis Simi introduced Charlotte to the demon hunter and said, "Jinnan, my good friend, we have done several magic item businesses together." White Wolf stretched out his hand and shook hands with Charlotte. This was the etiquette for strangers meeting for the first time in the old world. He said lightly, "White Wolf, a demon hunter." Louis Simi was very good at livening up the atmosphere. He interjected, "I just came back from Byron and imported a batch of special goods there. On the way, I hired Mr. White Wolf. He is a very reliable demon hunter." Charlotte was immediately relieved. Louis Simi, who had just returned from the Byron Empire, must not know what had happened in Strasbourg recently. White Wolf is not his real name, but a nickname. However, Charlotte herself uses a fake name, so she certainly doesn't mind this. She smiled and said, I just got a treasure map, so I joined an adventure team and plan to explore it. I hope to gain something. White Wolf's eyes lit up slightly and asked, what treasure map? Charlotte smiled and said, I bought it in a thrift store. It is said to be the treasure of the ancient Orc kingdom. White Wolf immediately lost interest and said lightly, this kind of treasure map is not reliable. Charlotte's nonsense was mainly to cover up why she appeared in a place like Yorktown. White Wolf's change of attitude was expected. A few people chatted casually and entered the giant wooden house. Charlotte did not forget to wave to her fellow adventurers and brought the people from the Great Axe Adventure Group in. White Wolf obviously didn't care about this, and didn't stop the Giant Axe Adventure Group from taking advantage of the situation. He entered the giant wooden house and pointed at a strong man and said, I'm going to take a bath. If you want to drink anything, feel free to ask Sam, remember to pay. Then he left. Only 2 people in this team were White Wolf's assistants, and the rest were Louis Simi's men. Seeing White Wolf leave, Louis smiled and said, we need more equipment to explore the treasure. I just happen to have some suitable goods for the wild. If you like them, you can take them away. Just give me a friendly price. Louis Simi raised his hand and gestured, and his men sent up a pile of equipment, including several extraordinary weapons. Charlotte was on the run, and she wanted to travel as light as possible. How could she be interested in buying any equipment? As for those extraordinary weapons, although he had some savings, he really couldn't afford such high-end things. He pretended to look at it for a while and found that there was a black iron ring mixed in with the goods. This iron ring was black and inconspicuous, but it had the family crest of a branch clan of the Arthur family. The Arthur family was one of the 37 clans of the Blood Clan, and also one of the 3 royal families, with a status higher than the 6 royal families. Although Charlotte could not recognize which branch clan this black iron ring came from, it was undoubtedly a blood-sucking weapon. He picked it up curiously and played with it for a while. Just as he was about to put it down, Louis Simi smiled and said, Mr. Mecklin is also interested in blood clan weapons? This weapon has an extraordinary origin, but I have never figured out how to use it as a weapon. If Mr. Mecklin knows, please tell me. I am willing to pay for the knowledge. The White Wolf had already left. The people from the Great Axe didn't dare to come over. They watched them chatting and laughing in the corner. There were no strangers around, so Louis Simi called Charlotte by her real surname. Charlotte had something to hide. She smiled awkwardly and asked, how much are you going to pay, Louis? Louis Simi pondered for a moment and said, I spent 95 écus to buy this ring. I thought I had picked up a treasure. You also know that the Arthur family is one of the 3 royal families of the Blood Clan. It is definitely worth the price, but after I got it, I couldn't figure out how to use it. So it could only be sold for 110 écus at most. If Mr. Mecklin has a way to find out how to really use it, I can promise that no matter how much it sells for, I am willing to pay 30% of the net profit as a reward for your appraisal. Charlotte asked curiously, Louis, didn't you find someone who is proficient in bloody glory to appraise it? Chapter 40, The Spear of San Lunchi. Louis Simi smiled bitterly and shook his head, saying, bloody glory is an ancient and very unpopular supernatural power. Not many people take this path. I found 2 people, one of whom was not interested in the price I offered. The other gentleman hoped that I could recycle another blood-sucking weapon he had, but the price was too high and I couldn't accept it. Charlotte certainly knew how unpopular bloody glory was. In his class at Sheffield University, he was the only one who chose this path. He was the only one in the 3 classes before him. He developed some interest, and bloody glory gathered and poured into this blood-sucking weapon. Louis Simi's eyes lit up slightly. Charlotte was interested in blood-sucking weapons. He had guessed that this young man was on the path of transcendence and was looking forward to it. The black iron ring did not reject Charlotte's bloody glory, but it was not as hungry as the blood-sucking hand axe. It silently devoured a certain amount of bloody glory, making a slight vibration, and bloomed bloodlight in Charlotte's hand, turning into a golden spear of more than 2 picometers. The spear was engraved with numerous patterns, and there was a faint blood flame flowing, revealing an extraordinary momentum. Louis Simi showed a surprised look and blurted out, San Lunchi's spear. It turned out to be the extraordinary weapon of Shanlunchi Arthur's family. Charlotte was also surprised. He did not recognize the family crest of the Shanlunchi family, nor had he heard of the name of Shanlunchi's spear, but he knew that this family was famous for making magic weapons, and he also knew that magic weapons that could change their forms were of extraordinary quality and especially expensive. Few people can control blood-sucking weapons, which makes the price of Blood Clan's extraordinary objects abnormally lower than ordinary magic weapons, but this kind of superb product that can change its form will be more expensive than magic weapons of the same quality. This is determined by the supply and demand of the market. Business principles? It was impossible to explain it clearly for a while. Louis Samy hesitated for a moment and said, Mr. Mecklin, you really gave me a big surprise. I have a very difficult matter to discuss with you now. The spear of Shanlunchi is a top-secret treasure. If I auction it in a hurry, I can't get a suitable price. I plan to wait for a top auction next year and then send it to participate in the auction. You will have to wait a long time. I am willing to pay a sum of money in advance, which may cause you a small loss, but you will get the reward today. I am not forcing you. If you are willing to wait, I will keep my promise. Charlotte deliberately pondered for a moment and smiled. I wish Mr. Lewis unprecedented success in that top auction. I don't want to wait that long. Charlotte didn't think it was a good idea to wait for next year's auction. Louis Samy was a businessman. Profits determined his attitude. When he returned to Strasbourg and knew that Charlotte Mecklin was already a wanted criminal in the empire, he would definitely not pay a centime. Getting a sum of money for nothing is always a good deal. Louis Samy was overjoyed. He picked out a rapier from the goods and said, I am willing to give this extraordinary weapon to Mr. Mecklin and pay an additional 200 écus. This rapier is also a blood-sucking weapon, from the Asilo family. Although the blade is slightly damaged, it can still be worth more than 150 écus. The Asilo family is one of the 3 royal families of the Blood Clan, on par with the Arthur family. They are proficient in martial arts and are the best in swordsmanship among the 37 clans of the Blood Clan. The clan also produces many famous swords. Louis Samy turned the hilt upside down and showed it to Charlotte. There was a special inscription on the guard of the hilt. He said, this Blood Clan extraordinary weapon also has a very nice and elegant name, Blood Rose. It's a perfect match for you. Louis Samy showed the inscription on the hilt as clearly as possible, but he didn't mean to pull out the rapier. Charlotte was shocked. He knew that this Shanlunchi spear would definitely be very expensive, but he didn't expect it to be so expensive. Louis Samy promised 30% of the net profit. He wanted to pay the fee in advance, so 30% of the net profit must be higher than a blood-sucking weapon, plus 200 écus. The price of blood-sucking weapons is abnormally low compared to ordinary extraordinary weapons. Louis Samy quoted 150 écus, which may be slightly inflated, but not much lower. In other words, this spear of Shanlunchi may be auctioned at a sky-high price of more than 1,200 écus. This price is equivalent to more than 20 million yuan in RMB, which can buy a second-class luxury house in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou and Shenzhen, and it is enough to buy a medium-sized manor in the Fars Empire. Charlotte grinned and said, Louis, you are such an excellent businessman. It's so comfortable to get along with you. He took the blood-sucking weapon and thought of a poem he had read in his previous life. One night, a light thunder fell on thousands of silk threads, and the clear light floated on the tiles. The affectionate peony contains spring tears, and the powerless rose lies on the branches in the morning. The blood rose is not a famous sword. At least Charlotte doesn't know its origin, and he doesn't plan to inquire about its history. This blood-sucking rapier was destined to remain unknown in his hands. Charlotte had no intention of continuing to build a career with it. Louis Samy took out another purse and handed it to Charlotte. The purse was heavy, and it was obviously not filled with banknotes. Charlotte took the purse and was surprised that Louis Samy actually paid with gold écus instead of fours. Louis Samy seemed to know his doubts, shrugged his shoulders and said, I just went to Baron to do business. They don't recognize fours banknotes, only gold écus and silver fours. I didn't bring fours banknotes, so I could only pay with gold écus. There are 2 denominations of écus, 1 écu and 5 écus, which are habitually called small écu and large écu by the Fars people. Louis Samy paid gold coins of both denominations. Charlotte took the purse and put away the blood-sucking rapier. Because of this transaction, the friendship between the two seemed to have deepened. The 5 members of the Giant Axe Adventure Group saw that Charlotte and Louis Samy seemed to have made a deal, but they were a little far away and did not hear the content of their conversation. They only saw that Louis Samy not only gave Charlotte a rapier, but also a bag of coins. They didn't know what the two were doing. Mason whispered, "Kyannan is not like an ordinary person." The 4 team members nodded together. Charlotte was not only not like an ordinary person, but her performance from the beginning was simply amazing. Hannah's eyes were slightly hot, and she started to think more and more. More than 10 minutes later, the White Wolf changed into a clean set of clothes and came out. He glanced at the people of the Giant Axe Adventure Group and said to Charlotte, "None of your companions are suitable for demon hunters. Even if you know Louis, I will not open this back door." Charlotte was fine, but Mason was particularly disappointed. He knew that there was little hope before coming, but it still felt terrible to have his hope directly shattered. Chapter 41 Travelers all have some dreams. Louis Samy smiled and said, "Jin Nan, you want to go find treasures? I have an idea. There are many adventurers outside. They are not expensive and experienced. They are much safer than a team like yours." Louis Samy's vision is not bad because he is in the business of magic items. He can see that none of the 5 people in the Great Axe Adventure Group are extraordinary. When they encounter danger, they can only serve as cannon fodder and cannot protect Charlotte, so he suggested that he recruit more people. Although there are probably no extraordinary people in the adventure teams outside, after all, people who have embarked on the extraordinary path will not come to accept the test of the White Wolf and want to obtain the power of the demon hunter, but it will always be safer with more people. Charlotte's eyes lit up slightly and said, "Thank you for your advice, Louis. I will recruit some new members after Mr. White Wolf selects the successor." White Wolf did not intend to rest. He ordered his men to prepare breakfast, invited Louis and Charlotte to the restaurant, and also sent food to Louis's men and the people of the Great Axe Adventure Group. After breakfast, the 3 chatted for a while before the sky became completely bright. White Wolf left the giant wooden house in high spirits and shouted, "Young man, who of you wants to get my inheritance?" Thunderous roars rang out outside the wooden house. Obviously, many people have come again. Many people have left their accommodation and come to the wooden house to wait. Transmigrators, more or less, have some dreams. Charlotte originally planned to be a stable civil servant in the government. If there was a chance, she would try to marry a white, rich and beautiful woman like Miss Anna Brittany to improve her social class. She didn't have too many ambitions. But he didn't expect that Miss Mandelman, who he regarded as a backer, would be involved in a political storm, and he had to flee because of the new warden Magruteller. If he hesitated a little at that time, he would definitely be pressed step by step and do many things he didn't want to do. In the end, it would not be good. At least he would be thrown into prison and sentenced to decades. After all, the new warden had planned to thoroughly investigate his case of misappropriating the prison's extraordinary weapons. If he got involved in such a case, he would be skinned alive. Louis Samy's unintentional words pushed open a door for Charlotte. This world has not yet come up with the concept of talent as the highest resource. But Charlotte knows that if he can get a team of adventurers with hundreds of people, how big a force it will be? He even thought of several ways to cultivate wasteland, raise the flag of rebellion, or other ways to make a fortune. As long as there is enough time, he can expand his power like a snowball. The selection of successors by the White Wolf is not complicated. It just publishes the standard, must be under 20 years old. Let the young people who are interested in becoming demon hunters duel each other, and finally a tall, strong, and muscular candidate is born. When the other failed adventurers were about to leave, Charlotte walked out of the giant wooden house and shouted, "I am Jin Nan, the leader of the Giant Axe Adventure Group. I need a group of people, 1 foral per week. I wonder if anyone is willing to join." 1 foral per week is not a high salary, but it is definitely not low, which is very attractive to adventurers, especially since they have made a wasted trip to Yorktown and need to fill a hole in their income. The income of the adventurers at the bottom is not stable, and overall it is far less than that of government officials. They will basically not give up any opportunity to make money. Someone immediately asked, "What kind of people do you need?" Charlotte smiled and said, "I want to move some things this time. The more people, the better. As long as you think you are strong and healthy, you can join, but let me make it clear first. I will temporarily withhold your first week's salary. I will pay you in the second week. Before the payday, no matter who leaves, I will not pay any remuneration. On the payday, you can freely choose whether to continue to travel with me or leave the team, Deducting part of the salary is a common practice in any industry in the old world. After all, in this era, any employer who pays the remuneration first will bear the risk of not seeing the employer in the next minute. The members of the Great Axe Adventure group who followed out couldn't help but look at Charlotte. Mason wanted to know, how did he become the leader? But when he heard the weekly salary of 1 Mason hesitated for a moment and chose not to say anything. He also gave the 4 members a suggestive look. He also wanted to make this money. Hannah and Himengsha had no objection. They even hoped that Charlotte, who had extraordinary power and looked handsome and rich, would become the leader of the team. When they came here yesterday, there were 40 to 50 people in front of the giant wooden house. Now there are 150 to 160 people. They are all small adventure groups. These adventurers discussed with their companions for a while, and soon more than 10 adventure teams expressed their willingness to accept Charlotte's employment. In order to recruit more people, Charlotte added a wait and said with a smile, "I will probably hire you for more than 1 month, or even 2 months." As soon as this sentence came out, 7 more teams agreed to join. The number of adventurers hired by Charlotte has expanded to nearly 100. It is difficult for adventurers to get a stable income for 2 months. This long-term employment is quite attractive. Charlotte looked at these adventurers who accepted the employment and said loudly, "I am from the south, and my ancestors had orc blood." Many adventurers laughed out loud. It is not a glorious thing to have orc blood in the old continent, especially since the orc kingdom has long been annihilated and the people are displaced. They are inferior people in any country. However, the adventurers didn't really care about this. After all, they were just doing things for money, and no one cared about the employer's bloodline. As long as they were paid, most adventurers would even work for the Black Phoenix dynasty, the mortal enemy of the Fars Empire. Charlotte continued, "I just inherited the legacy of an uncle, and found a treasure map of the Orc Kingdom among his relics. This time, I am going to find those ancient treasures. I swear to the goddess here that if I can find the treasure, I will take out 5% and share it with those who find the treasure with me." This time, even the remaining adventurers were moved. Many people had greed and fire in their eyes. Many people even thought in their hearts, if the treasure is really found, killing this young man will not get more. White Wolf glanced at Lewis and whispered, "Your friend is very good at lying." Lewis shrugged his shoulders and said nothing. When Charlotte saw them, he said that the treasure map was bought from a thrift store. Now it has become his uncle's relic. Even if he wanted to cover up for Charlotte, he didn't know how to explain it. What's more, he was 100% sure that Charlotte did not have any orc blood from the southern continent. It was impossible for a lady from the Brittany family to make friends with orcs, even if she had only a little orc blood. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42. The king is only the one with the strongest soldiers and horses. In the past, the Orc Kingdom and the Sherlock dynasty fought for hegemony in the old world. The war lasted for more than 300 years. In the end, the Orc Kingdom was destroyed by the Sherlock dynasty, and millions of orcs were slaughtered. The Sherlock dynasty also exhausted the country's potential due to hundreds of years of war and was defeated by the rising Fars Empire. But no matter what, the Orc Kingdom was once the top power in the old world. Those orc nobles who were slaughtered in blood would hide a lot of wealth before they died. It is also a famous legend in the old world. There have been people who really found the treasure hidden by the orc nobles and became rich. Experienced people like White Wolf and Lewis can sneer at a treasure map that they don't know whether it is true or not, but these low-level adventurers don't have this determination. They can gather in Yorktown for the inheritance of a demon hunter, and naturally they will believe in an illusory treasure map. Anyway, someone is paying for it, so it's not a loss even if they run in vain. In particular, Charlotte was frustrated by White Wolf, and cleverly changed the source of the treasure map from a thrift store to his uncle's relic, making it more credible. The remaining adventurers were also incited to join Charlotte's new team. Only 2 teams refused the invitation. They did not even stay and left Yorktown soon. Charlotte turned around with a smile and said to White Wolf, "Mr. White Wolf, sell me all your beer, I'll treat everyone here to a drink together." The adventurers cheered loudly, and the giant wooden house suddenly became lively. Charlotte drank a glass of beer in one breath, and suddenly threw the glass to the ground and roared to the sky. He has always behaved politely, and he is indeed a polite person, whether he was a math teacher in his previous life or a civilian office worker after traveling through time. But Magro Teller signed the dismissal order, wiping out Charlotte Mecklen's life's hard work at will, and forcing him to betray Mandelman, and made an undisguised gesture that he would throw him away like a rag afterwards. This breath was really suffocating. Before, Charlotte just wanted to endure it and wait. Maybe Mandelman could get out of the political struggle and save him, but at that moment, Charlotte suddenly thought of being chased by 2 detectives from the Wild Horse Detective Agency. She felt a surge of anger in her heart and shattered this fantasy with her own hands. He wiped the wine stains from the corners of his mouth and glanced at the more than 100 adventurers he had fooled. An idea that he had heard of since childhood but had never thought of putting into practice suddenly emerged in his mind. Since he had fled, he could no longer continue to be a salary thief in the government sequence and spend his life leisurely. Why not just make a big scene? Damn it, are there any kings, princes, generals, or ministers? A king is only a person with strong soldiers and horses. I am weak now, and these adventurers are useless, but sooner or later, I will have thousands of warriors, and I will go back to Strasbourg and chop off Magro Teller's head, so that he will know that bullying a time traveler will not end well. Wang Hisheng was born in a peaceful era and had never experienced a war in his life, so he never thought about taking revenge himself. Even if he was hunted down, it was just legitimate defense. Just at that moment, Charlotte suddenly understood what carrying a sharp blade, killing instinct arises. He fooled these adventurers. Was it really for the treasure of the ancient Orc Empire? He really didn't have any treasure map. Even if he had, what's the use of a treasure map? Even if he could find the treasure, he was still a wanted criminal of the vast empire? Even if he went to live in another country, wouldn't he be oppressed by officials? Charlotte's thoughts came to him, and he was filled with a sense of power. He glanced at the adventurers who were drinking, pointed his finger at the sky, and shouted, "For those who are searching for treasure with me this time, I, Jin Nan, swear by my orc ancestors that their wealth in the future will not be less than 100 gold ecu. Let's go." He kicked the suitcase used to conceal his identity, which had nothing valuable in it anyway. He carried the magic alchemy staff and the blood-sucking rapier given by Lewis, and strode out of Yorktown. The adventurers were attracted by his power, and some of them dropped their glasses and followed him. With a leader, the rest of the adventurers followed Charlotte in 2s and 3s. The team suddenly had a little cohesion. White Wolf glanced at the messy ground in front of his cabin and said, "Lewis, your friend is incredible. He will definitely achieve great things in the future, but why do I see the temperament of a desperado in him?" "You won't deal with desperados," Louis Sami smiled bitterly. "He is an imperial civil servant, and he is the kind with a very promising future." White Wolf asked curiously, "What kind of promising future?" Louis Sami replied, "His female companion is the daughter of a certain earl." White Wolf was stunned for a moment and whispered, "No wonder. If he wants to marry the daughter of an earl, he must have the temperament of a desperado." Louis Sami spread his hands. That's not what he meant. After leaving Yorktown, Charlotte asked loudly, "Who knows the ruins of Machupi?" Immediately, an adventurer shouted, "I've been to Machupi." Charlotte smiled slightly and said, "Very good, please let this gentleman lead the way." Machupi is a fortress in the ancient Orc kingdom, known as the Machupi that will never fall. The Sherlock dynasty used a trick to capture the fortress and then set fire to Machupi, turning the fortress of the ancient Orc kingdom into ruins. Now, hundreds of years have passed, and it has become extremely desolate, and even many terrifying rumors have emerged. Only a few adventurers will try their luck. Hearing that they were going to Machupi, some adventurers hesitated slightly. There were too many terrible rumors about the fortress of the ancient Beast Kingdom, but when they thought about it, it was not a small team at this time, but a large team of more than 100 people, and there were extraordinary people leading the team. It is said that Mr. Jin Nan still has a treasure map in his hand, and maybe he can avoid danger. With a warm heart, he continued to follow. There are 2 reasons why Charlotte chose Machupi. One is that this group of rabble is simply impossible to travel long distances. Even for elite troops, long-distance marches are a big problem. Machupi is very close, only more than 200 kilometers away from Strasbourg in a straight line. For this group of adventurers, it is only a 2 or 3 days journey, which is a desert goal. And in a week, he would have to pay his first salary. Although he could afford it, well, he was a little reluctant to pay it. Chapter 43 Conflict. There is another reason. He has recently studied the Agneris labyrinth and has some experience. He needs to find a place to verify it. Machupi is a good experimental site. In order to control this group of adventurers with complex origins as much as possible, Charlotte adjusted the team structure on the road, with the reason being, we may encounter danger on the road, and we need a battle formation. He gathered the leaders of more than a dozen small adventure groups and divided the remaining people into 2 teams according to gender. The male adventurers were responsible for the baggage and the female adventurers were responsible for food and water. Charlotte's personnel adjustment was not radical, and it showed that it was a temporary adjustment and did not encounter any opposition. In a small adventure team, the leader is generally the highest combat power and the core of the team. The team members are quite dependent on the leader. Charlotte temporarily separated the leader from their team members, which naturally weakened the influence of the leader and slightly increased his authority, giving him a little control over the team. An adventure team of more than 100 people is already a medium to large adventure group. It has to worry about all aspects. Charlotte constantly took advantage of various opportunities to enhance his position along the way. After walking for a day, this makeshift adventure group chose to rest temporarily in a place called Maple Leaf Village. Maple Leaf Village was not very big, and there were not so many empty houses. They also refused to allow so many people to enter the village for fear of being robbed. Charlotte once again showed her mature social skills. After discussing with the people in the village, she let all the female adventurers enter the village to rest. He and the male team members were stationed outside the village. Just as Charlotte arranged all this, a team wearing black windbreakers appeared from the direction they came from. People from the Fiery Horse Detective Agency. The iconic black coats of these detectives from the Fiery Horse Agency were very eye-catching. They once met Charlotte in the village of the Great Axe Adventure Group, and then they went their separate ways. Charlotte thought she had escaped, but she didn't expect these detectives to catch up. Charlotte thought in her heart, these adventurers are not reliable. Once a conflict occurs, they may not stand on my side. We must strike first and give them sufficient reasons to fight. He waved his hand and gathered the leaders of the small adventure groups together, whispering, these people are detectives hired by my cousin. They also want to go to Machupi. If they find the treasure first, we will have to return empty-handed and watch them get rich. I can't allow this to happen. That's our wealth. We have a lot of people. We can capture these detectives alive and imprison them in the team. We will release them when we find the wealth. Generally, adventurers are unwilling to provoke powerful forces. The Fiery Horse Detective Agency employs more than 100 detectives, 200 to 300 detective assistants, a large number of trainee detectives, and even more than 10 extraordinary people. Small adventure groups dare not conflict with them. What's more, the president of the Fiery Horse Detective Agency, Aubrey Teutonic Atwood, is not only a high-level extraordinary person, but also very skilled. He is very famous in the entire Fars Empire. The leaders of these small adventure groups would never dare to kill the people from the Fiery Horse Detective Agency, but Charlotte instigated them to capture these detectives alive and temporarily imprison them, and some people were ready to act. After all, there were indeed many people here. An adventure leader named Yas said, although they only have 7 people, there are at least 2 extraordinary people. Especially the leader Winterborn. I know him, he is a 4th-level extraordinary person, a genuine flame dragon knight. Charlotte smiled slightly and said, I will deal with this person, and you can send 5 people to assist me. Charlotte was willing to take on the most difficult battle, and the leaders of these small adventure groups were immediately moved. Under the auspices of this temporary leader, they summoned the best players of their respective teams and quickly divided up the battle targets. Winterborn had a grim face, and he was actually very annoyed. The wizards of the detective agency were far inferior to the fortune-teller Wells in finding people. He was very sure that this mission had failed and he had lost the target. Not only did they fail to catch Charlotte, but they also lost an important supernatural detective. This business was a loss for the Sharp Horse Detective Agency. Wells's position in the Sharp Horse Detective Agency was irreplaceable. Many cases relied on his profession as a fortune-teller, and there was no way to add supernatural personnel in this area in a short period of time. He also noticed that there was a medium to large adventure team in the distance, but as a senior detective of the Sharp Horse Detective, he was not afraid of these rabble, not to mention that there was no conflict between the two sides. Winterborn was about to bypass this group of adventurers when he heard someone greet him. Is that Mr. Winterborn? Although Winterbourne was full of fighting spirit, he did not have the ability to see in the dark, and he was not familiar with the person who was speaking. He did not recognize the person who was speaking. He was slightly stunned and replied, "It's me." After all, he was a senior detective with rich experience, so he did not relax his vigilance at all. But then he heard the other party say, "So it was you who seduced my wife?" More than a dozen men rushed out in a swarm, and Winterbourne was shocked, thinking, "When have I seduced so many men's wives?" Although Charlotte patted his chest and said that he would be the main force to pick Winterbourne, after the more than 10 people surrounded the 7 detectives, he pulled out the blood rose and stabbed Addison with a sword. Even the Lima Detective Agency could not have extraordinary people everywhere. This time, the 7 detectives who came to hunt him down only had 2 extraordinary people, Winterbourne and Addison. Charlotte was Chinese after all. He had read comic books such as the 36 Stratagems since he was a child. Before he took action, he made up his mind to kill Addison first. Without this extraordinary knight, Winterbourne would be left alone and would save a lot of trouble. Addison didn't expect that someone would actually attack him. He was a 3rd-level knight, and his reaction was extremely fast. He drew his sword and blocked Charlotte's sword. However, he didn't expect Charlotte to be unscrupulous and pulled out the Magnum hand shuttle and fired 12 shots in a row, forcing Addison to roar wildly. The flame-fighting spirit burst out and formed a ball of flame tornado around his body, blocking the bullet at the critical moment. Before Charlotte attacked, she had already calculated this step. Although the knight's fighting spirit can protect the body, it must be distributed differently when facing the enemy. Addison tried his best to resist the bullets from the front, and the defense behind him was 80% insufficient. While he fired, he stuck the blood rose into the ground, activated the insight ability, and threw the blood-sucking hand axe at the weakest part of Addison's protective fighting spirit. Under the control of the blood flame, the blood-sucking hand axe drew a strange arc and broke through Addison's protective flame-fighting spirit. After only a few days of not seeing each other, Charlotte had already been promoted to the next level, and the power of her blood flame energy had also increased several times. The power of this attack was far greater than the last time, and it hit the back of the extraordinary detective's head hard, with the axe blade penetrating 3 inches of his skull. Chapter 44, Byron. Addison had just activated his fighting spirit and used all his strength to block the bullets. How could he have spared the strength to resist the blood-sucking hatchet? Under the violent increase of the blood flame, the vitality of this extraordinary detective was gushing out like a tide, and was devoured by the blood-sucking hatchet. Addison's strength was far superior to Wells, and he was still able to fight back. Crazy Valley activated his fighting spirit to resist the devouring power of the blood flame. He also recognized Charlotte and shouted, "It's you." Charlotte smiled but didn't answer. She pulled out the thorn sword blood rose again, shook it lightly, and attacked 3 times. If it was a normal sword duel, 10 Charlottes might not be Addison's opponent. His swordsmanship was quite mediocre. He had only learned it, not mastered it. Addison's swordsmanship was very powerful, ruthless and experienced, and had been tempered in actual combat. But Addison fell into the calculation and was seriously injured. How could he resist Charlotte, who was holding an extraordinary blood-sucking weapon and had the ability of insight? Charlotte pierced Addison's body easily. Even with a flame-fighting spirit protecting his body, Addison could no longer resist. He collapsed to the ground, his eyes full of resentment and hatred. The 2 blood-sucking weapons absorbed the essence of life at the same time, which made Charlotte suddenly excited. He shouted, "Don't do it yet." At his urging, another 20 or 30 adventurers swarmed out to join the battle. Winterbourne was shocked and angry. Although he was surrounded by 5 adventurers, he still had a sense of measure. Seeing Addison being killed in an instant, how could he not know that these people were coming for them? Is this a targeted trap? This 4th-level knight knew the danger and burst out his fighting spirit without reservation. His cultivation was even higher than Addison's, and he immediately forced the 5 adventurers who were besieging him away. At this time, Charlotte absorbed the essence of life sent back by the blood-sucking thorn sword while pulling out a blood-sucking hand axe, urging the blood flame energy, and throwing the hand axe again. The small blood-sucking hand axe flew and slashed at him. Winterbourne saw with his own eyes that Charlotte killed Addison with a strange weapon. He did not dare to underestimate it. With the flames of fighting spirit rolling, he combined with his strong swordsmanship to break the flying blood-sucking hand axe with one sword. After the blood-sucking hand axe was broken, it circled in the air and chopped down again, as flexible as a flying bird. The old world had never had such a strange fighting technique. Winterbourne did not dare to advance for a while. He stabbed the sword in a circle and protected himself from the wind and rain. Seeing that Charlotte had such a supernatural power, the adventurers were all confident and excited, and they joined the battle. Charlotte manipulated the blood-sucking hand axe so elusive that it attracted most of Winterbourne's attention. While manipulating the blood-sucking hand axe, he quickly digested the life essence he swallowed. At this moment, if he could improve his strength by 1 point, he would have a better chance of winning. Addison was a third-level extraordinary being, with a vitality as blazing as fire, stronger and more vigorous than Wells. Charlotte used Bloody Glory to wrap Addison's life essence, and activated the Protagoras breathing method. After 35 breaths, the blood-sucking thorn sword stopped vibrating, and no more breath of life came. He drew out the blood-sucking thorn sword, letting Addison's body fall to the ground, and casually glance at the weapon in his hand. The craftsmanship, quality, and design of this newly acquired magic thorn sword were all extraordinary, but there were countless tiny gaps on the blade. It was not slightly damaged as Louis Samy said, but it was seriously damaged. The old owner of this blood rose must have fought countless battles in his life, otherwise a magic weapon of such quality would never be destroyed to this extent. Charlotte remembered the scene where Louis was very enthusiastic about showing the inscription, but did not draw the sword at all, and cursed in her heart, "It's really a profiteer." Subconsciously, she poured Bloody Glory into the blade, but saw a strange scene. The magic rapier was silent for a while, and then it uttered a clear whistle. The blade was slightly liquefied, and the broken gap was repaired by itself, as if it had just been sharpened, bright as water. His heart was shocked, and he had not had time to think about what this change meant. The next second, the magic rapier heated up slightly, turned into a bloody stream of light and merged into his left arm, and the fourth bloody vortex quietly took shape. Charlotte's mood at this time could no longer be described as shocking. Each magic weapon that can change its form is of extraordinary quality and especially expensive. Shan Munchi's spear can be transformed into ring, allowing the owner to carry it with him, which is already top-notch. This magic rapier can repair itself and can also give rise to a bloody vortex, allowing Bloody Glory to break through to the 4th level. It must be more precious. For a moment, if Charlotte was not on the run at this time, there would be no channel to sell this extraordinary weapon. She wanted to sell it again and make a lot of money. However, this blood-sucking thorn sword, Blood Rose, can repair itself and hide in the bloody vortex. It is really a perfect self-defense weapon. Charlotte is not willing to sell it. He shook his wrist lightly, and the Blood Rose reappeared in his hand. He thought to himself, what a pity. My swordsmanship is too mediocre. Even if I have a magic weapon in my hand, I can't be a master of swordsmanship. Although Winterbourne was besieged, he was entangled with an elusive blood-sucking hand axe. After all, he was a 4th-level knight and could still gain the upper hand. The other 5 detectives were no match for this group of adventurers. Under the siege of dozens of adventurers, 2 people were shot dead and 3 were captured alive. This is how battles are. It is difficult to guarantee that no one will die. Winterbourne did not expect the situation to deteriorate to such an extent, and could not help but shouting, "We are detectives from the Fiery Horse Detective Agency." "Aren't you afraid of the Fiery Horse Detective Agency?" Charlotte immediately responded, "Sorry. We are from Barrow." Winterbourne shouted in horror, "Are you spies?" This time, Charlotte did not need to answer, and all the adventurers agreed, "Yes, we are spies. Spies from Barrow." No one wanted to offend the Fiery Horse Detective Agency. Charlotte talked nonsense, and the group of adventurers admitted it. Hoping to lead the conflict to the Barrow people. Winterbourne's heart suddenly sank, and he believed 80% to 90%. Charlotte used the vampire secret method and blood-sucking weapons. Wells and Addison were both drained of their vitality. They really had some vampire style. He no longer dared to hold back his strength. The flames on his body surged, and the rapier once again broke the blood-sucking hand axe and circled, killing the 2 leaders of the small adventure groups that besieged him. With one move, Winterbourne forcibly broke through the encirclement. With the help of Dowkey Valley, he was as fast as a galloping horse and escaped from the battle in the blink of an eye. Charlotte watched him escape and could only sigh in regret and give up chasing him. Although he swallowed Addison's life essence, broke through the 3rd level, was promoted again, and had several superpowers, he was a civilian after all and was not good at fighting. If he chased him alone, the end might not be very good. Chapter 45, A knight's lance is like a dragon from the sky. There were no extraordinary people among Charlotte's adventurers. A fourth-level knight wanted to escape, and ordinary people could not catch up. Besides, Winterbourne would run away, and by the time he came back to find reinforcements, Charlotte had already gone to nowhere. Just as Charlotte was about to finish and continue to fool her adventurers, she heard a sharp whistle that broke through the air. A knight's lance was like an evil dragon from outer space, with a force of 10,000 pounds, piercing Winterbourne's body. The lance was still strong, and it took the body of the fourth-level knight dozens of steps away and nailed him to the ground alive. Charlotte saw this scene and felt a chill. The strength of the person who took action was so strong that he had never seen it in his life. If this person was an enemy, even if more than 100 adventurers followed him to fight to the death, the end would probably be nothing more than a massacre. The adventurers were also stunned. Although they were all low-level adventurers, they lived in the wild all year round and often fought. Although their strength was average, there were almost no people with poor eyesight. Many people exclaimed, "High-level extraordinary." Charlotte took a deep breath, knowing that it was useless to hide or escape. Holding the blood-sucking hand axe in one hand and the magic rapier in the other, she strode forward and shouted, "Who?" A steady voice said lightly, "This time the Empire's plan cannot have any mistakes. Fortunately, I happened to meet him at the right time. Otherwise, if this person escaped and leaked the Empire's plan, you would be a sinner. Report your name and official position. I will complain to the military." These words were spoken in the Byron language. Most adventurers could not speak Byron, but after all, Fars and Byron were both one of the 5 major empires in the old continent, and they could tell that the other party was a Byron. Many people felt desperate. They had just pretended to be Byron's spies. Now they met a real Byron. Almost everyone could imagine what the end would be. Charlotte secretly said, "Thank the goddess, thank Sheffield University, thank you for higher education." She replied in pure Byronian, "Sorry, I am on a secret mission and cannot reveal my identity." Charlotte Mecklen is proficient in 7 languages, including Byronian, and her answer is clear and full, without any Fars accent. The most essential difference between him and this group of adventurers is that he has received the highest level of education in the Empire. A tall, handsome middle-aged man came out of the darkness with 2 followers. He had fair skin with a golden glow and slightly bloodshot eyes. He was a typical vampire. He said approvingly, "Good. Don't give up your principles just because of authority. I can consider giving up the complaint temporarily. You use blood flame energy. Are you from the Adonis clan?" Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief and replied, "Yes." At the same time, she threw the vampire dagger in her hand, pierced Winterbourne's body, and shouted, "I need you all to work together to give these Fars people a final blow. For those who are willing, I will treat you as my own people. For those who are unwilling, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. You know too much." The mysterious middle-aged vampire glanced at the group of adventurers, and a heavy pressure like a mountain rose from his body. As if an ancient behemoth was staring at a group of little white rabbits, making everyone feel fear and trembling. The adventurers looked at each other, and soon someone made a smart choice and stabbed the detective from the Lima Detective Agency. To put it bluntly, Charlotte's plan had no technical content. It was just like the letter of surrender in the water margin. These adventurers came from all directions and were divided into more than a dozen small adventure groups. There was no team at all and they could abandon him at any time. With the pressure of this mysterious high-level extraordinary person from Baron, Charlotte forced these people to hand in the letter of surrender, which greatly increased the cohesion of the team and his personal prestige. At the same time, it could also explain why he, a Baron spy, was followed by a group of low-level adventurers from Fars. He was proficient in blood flame, knew Baron language, and could disguise himself as Baron people. These adventurers who couldn't even speak Baron language could never pretend to be vampires. They could only be his blood servants who were temporarily subdued. This was an old tradition of the vampires in the Baron Empire. Under the tyrannical power of the mysterious high-level extraordinary Byron, more than 100 adventurers, whether they were willing or not, pinched their noses and came up, stabbing the 7 detectives of the Fiery Horse Society one by one with a knife, a sword, a dagger, or a hammer. That's right, even the dead Addison and Winterbourne, as well as the 2 detectives killed in the battle, were not spared. The 3 captured Fiery Horse detectives died miserably. He stretched out his hand to pull out the vampire rapier and put it into his left arm, and then pulled out the knight's lance, handed it to the mysterious middle-aged vampire with both hands, and then ordered to search the bodies of the dead detectives. The body search yielded more than 7 acres in cash, of which 5 acres were found from Addison. This was normal. Except for a fugitive like him, who would carry all his wealth on his body? He converted the equipment of the 7 detectives into price, and distributed it to the group of adventurers fairly together with the cash. After the threat, giving rewards can make the group of adventurers feel at ease. This kind of practice of combining kindness and severity is common sense on Earth. The adventurers were indeed relieved, diluting the tense atmosphere. The tall and handsome middle-aged man nodded slightly, a smile appeared on his face, and he was very satisfied with Charlotte, saying, "Not bad. Some of the style of a Byron soldier. I am Lord Leo, and I have a special mission like you. I have temporarily requisitioned you and your subordinates. Please tell me your name." Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief and replied, "Chen Nan. You can call me Chen Nan." Lord Byron casually touched the knight's lance and turned it into a rapier, which he casually put into the scabbard at his waist. Charlotte had just seen this advanced weapon that can change between 2 forms not long ago, and couldn't help but exclaimed, "Shanlunchi's lance? You are actually from the Arthur clan." Lord Leo's knight's lance is more gorgeous than the one in Louis Sami's hand, and its value must be higher. It can be sold for at least 1,500 gold ecu. Adonis is one of the 6 royal families, but Arthur is one of the 3 royal families. And his natural status is higher than all the blood clans. Lord Leo nodded slightly, hiding his arrogance, and said, "Archduke Ferdinand of the Principality of Behemoth is going to Strasbourg to meet Julius VI. I need his route and detailed information, Kyanan. You entered Fars before me, what information can you provide me?" Charlotte was startled and thought to herself, "Why do these Bayern people want to know the route Archduke Ferdinand took to enter Strasbourg?" He answered casually, "I am going to Machupi, which is only 200 kilometers away from Strasbourg. It is said that Archduke Ferdinand will pass by the ruins of this ancient Or Kingdom fortress." Chapter 46 Angel's Thorn. Lord Leo showed a happy expression and said, "Jin Nan, you are indeed an excellent soldier. I don't care about your mistake just now. My 2 servants and I have been traveling for a long time and need to rest. Please help me keep watch." Charlotte welcomed Lord Leo into the adventure camp. The middle-aged vampire chose a big tree and took a nap with his back against a trunk. His 2 servants were divided into 2 shifts to guard their master and did not trust this group of adventurers. Charlotte wiped the sweat from her forehead, hid from Lord Leo, found a remote place, and sat down. First, they traveled a day and fought a battle. The sudden incident just now was too thrilling and exciting, which made people's adrenaline soar, but afterwards, they were twice as tired. Charlotte felt sore all over her body that she didn't even want to move a little finger. Although she temporarily avoided the crisis by improvisation, Lord Leo would sooner or later find out that he was not one of them. Once Lord Leo discovered that he was not from the Adonis clan, but had practiced a bloody glory that the vampires hated the most, how could he save his life under the wrath of this high-level extraordinary? Charlotte hadn't figured out a solution yet. He knew that although it seemed safe at this moment, it was actually full of dangers. If he was not careful, he would die. After recovering his strength for a while, although his body was still very tired, he still forced himself to concentrate and practice the Pratagara breathing method to digest Winterborn's life essence as soon as possible. Lord Leo shot through Winterborn's body, but did not devour his vitality. High-level vampires valued the purity of blood energy more. Unrestrained and crazy devouring of vitality would easily degenerate into monsters, so they would not casually devour prey with a lower level of extraordinary than themselves, but only occasionally replenish it. But for Charlotte, the life essence of a 4th-level knight was too precious. He had not grown to the level where he needed to be picky, so he made up for it with a sword. After more than 100 breaths, when all the essence of life turned into bloody glory, Charlotte did not open the 5th bloody vortex, but chose to condense a bloody rune, Angel's Thorn. The reason why he made such a choice. It was because of the blood rose. Angel's Thorn is one of the 13 strange skills of bloody glory, and it is also the foundation of the secret method of the Asilo blood clan. The Asilo family is one of the 3 royal families of the blood clan. They are proficient in martial arts and are the best in swordsmanship among the 37 clans of the blood clan. As the foundation of the secret method of the Asilo blood clan, Angel's Thorn is not only an extraordinary secret method, but also an extraordinary swordsmanship, which is famous in the old continent. In the secret volume of Bloody Glory, the record of Angel's Thorn is vague. No one knows how the great philosopher Protagoras learned this secret method, integrated it, and incorporated it into bloody glory. There are few students who practice bloody glory in the 4 universities of the empire. Since the death of the great philosopher Protagoras, the rest of the strange runes have been cultivated, but no one has ever successfully cultivated Angel's Thorn. After studying the Protagoras scrolls and the customs of the Asilo clan, many scholars came to the conclusion that practicing the Angel's Thorn requires the inheritance of the blood clan. The elders of the Asilo clan will condense their cultivation into a special seed. Only the blood clan that obtains this seed can cultivate the Angel's Thorn and step into the practice of the Asilo clan's secret method. Although Protagoras gave the scrolls to the 4 universities, he did not accept any disciples. Later, Fars and Baron established diplomatic relations and announced that human beings who practiced bloody glory were not allowed to enter the country, and no human race could inherit the Angel's Thorn. The blood rose can forcibly break open the 4th bloody vortex, which means that it contains the previous owner's understanding of the Asilo clan's secret method. Charlotte didn't want to waste this opportunity. He stretched out his hand and wiped it, and the blood rose heated up slightly, turning into a blood-colored stream of light and merging into his left arm. In the bloody vortex of his left arm, the magic rapier turned into a rune structure that looked like a sword, trembling constantly and stabbing. Charlotte closed her eyes slightly, and countless strange and cruel swordsmanship emerged in her mind. Each move was incredible and as fast as lightning. Fortunately, he had experienced looking directly at the evil god twice, and his spirituality was comparable to that of a high-level extraordinary person. Only then could he deeply imprint these swordsmanship in his mind and fully accept this inheritance of the Asilo family. About a few hours later, at the moment of dawn, Charlotte opened her eyes, with a faint blood-colored electric light lingering in her eyes. She exhaled deeply, shook her hand casually, and the blood rose appeared out of thin air. He held the blood-sucking rapier in his palm, rubbing it carefully, and secretly thought, this extraordinary weapon given by Lewis may have some origin. He can be said to be lucky to get Shanlunchi's spear, but he can also get this blood-sucking rapier. I'm afraid there is another hidden story. Lewis should not know the origin of these 2 weapons, otherwise he would never give me one of them. I have a hunch that this matter may be a bit troublesome. Charlotte heard someone calling the name Kyanan. Without time to comprehend the newly cultivated supernatural power, she hurriedly stood up and ran to Lord Leo. The blood clan Lord of Baron had already woken up. Seeing Charlotte, he smiled and said, I brought blood bait. Do you want 2 pieces? Blood bait is a kind of blood food made by magic. It is one of the favorite foods of blood clans. It can be carried with you and is convenient to store for a long time. Because the raw material of blood bait is 100% human blood, Charlotte is a human being, and has been a human being in his past and present lives. He is not interested in this kind of food. He has a psychological barrier. Charlotte smiled slightly and said, I brought a blood servant. Lord Leo nodded slightly, and did not continue to persuade him. Instead, he had a simple and luxurious breakfast served by 2 servants. The 2 servants spread a picnic tablecloth on the ground, took out exquisite tableware, and placed blood bait and some cakes on the tin plate. They also took out an exquisite wine pot and matched it with a tin wine glass. After Lord Leo finished his meal, he wiped his mouth with a red napkin and said, we can set off. The 2 servants neatly put away the tablecloth, tableware, wine pot, and wine glass, and followed the master closely, without saying a word from beginning to end. Charlotte asked people to go into Maple Leaf Village, called all the female adventurers out, cleaned up the camp, and surrounded Lord Leo Timachupi. After a morning of long journey, Charlotte complained bitterly. He had never experienced such hardship before. None of the adventurers he gathered had mounts because of their low income. Lord Leo thought that high-level vampires could ride on ordinary mounts for long-distance raids or short-distance sprints. It was inconvenient and unnecessary for them to carry mounts when they sneaked into other countries as spies. He was too embarrassed to get a horse by himself. Besides, they didn't pass through any large towns during their escape, so they had no way to buy horses. Charlotte missed the rune of agility that he had never been able to cultivate. Chapter 47 Blood Flame Transfiguration. Unfortunately, opening the 4th bloody vortex and practicing the Angel's Thorn consumed all of Addison and Winterbourne's life essence. The rune of the agility technique will probably take more than 10 days to work on. However, there are better choices than the agility technique and the spirit spider technique. The first page of the secret scroll of vampires records the blood flame energy, the foundation of the secret technique of the Adonis blood family. The second page records the blood flame deformation technique. As the name suggests, the blood flame deformation technique cannot be transformed, it can only be transformed into a ball of blood flame. Charlotte doesn't care whether he can transform into various animals or different people's appearances, but if he can transform into a ball of blood flame, he can float in the air. It's worse than flying, but it's enough for traveling. During the lunch break, Charlotte was called over by Lord Leo. The first sentence he said made him feel cold all over. "We, Byron, have signed an alliance with the Black Phoenix dynasty, so this time we want to lure the restorers of South Slav to assassinate Archduke Ferdinand, so as to ignite the flames of war." Charlotte looked directly at the evil god, her soul shattered, and then reunited, activating all the memories of her two lives. Charlotte Mecklen's early knowledge was still fresh in his memory, and of course he knew the historical grievances between South Slav and the Principality of Behemoth. In short, South Slav resisted the invasion of the Fars Empire, and was on the verge of victory, but was stabbed in the back by the Principality of Behemoth and lost the country. South Slav was destroyed for almost 200 years, and the South Slavs were still respectful to the empire and recognized the empire's rule, but they always hated the Principality of Behemoth. There was a rumor that someone got drunk in a tavern and shouted, "I am from the Principality of Behemoth," and was beaten to death by a group of South Slavs. The hatred between the two countries can be seen. If the restorer of Yugoslavia assassinated Archduke Ferdinand, the Fars Empire royal family would avenge him no matter what. The restorer of Yugoslavia simply could not withstand the full force of the imperial army and would inevitably seek help from outside. The slight flapping of the wings of a small butterfly may cause a devastating storm. However, sometimes the storm is manipulated by people. Although Charlotte is a time traveler and has no feelings for the Fars Empire, he still shudders when he thinks of how many innocent people will die if a war breaks out. Before he traveled through time, he lived in a country that had been peaceful for decades. It was because he had enjoyed a long period of peace that he knew the value of peace and the horror of war. He whispered, "I didn't receive this order," Lord Leo said. "Your position is too low, so it's not surprising that you don't know the whole inside story of this plan. However, you must fully cooperate with my actions. After completing this mission, you can be transferred to my command, and I promise to promote you at least one level." Charlotte expressed her gratitude respectfully, but secretly thought in her heart, "We should find ways to destroy the plan of the Byron people. It's ridiculous that I, a fugitive, am still thinking about helping the Fars Empire maintain peace." Lord Leo was very satisfied with Charlotte's attitude. He explained a few more words, waved his hand and let him leave, ready to set off again. The team moved very quickly along the way. After more than 2 days of walking, they arrived at Machupi. Although this fortress of the ancient Orc dynasty was breached and burned by the Sherlock dynasty, it was still majestic even though only ruins were left. The architecture of the Orc dynasty is huge and beautiful. Each building is tens of meters high, especially the gate of the fortress, which is even more majestic. Even though the city has been destroyed for hundreds of years, it is still shocking. Charlotte was exhausted, but she still volunteered to go and check the situation in person. Both the adventurers under him and Lord Leo thought that this man was very reliable. The adventurers thought that this leader was very brave to personally deal with things. Lord Leo thought that this future subordinate was brave and hard-working, and was a good material for being a personal follower. Only Charlotte knew that he entered Machupi alone to verify the results of his recent research on the first page of the Agneris Labyrinth. Holding a magic alchemy staff in one hand and an old magnum hand shuttle in the other, Charlotte walked into Machupi with great momentum. When he entered the collapsed fortress gate, the ruins blocked the view outside, so he immediately put away the two weapons, took out his diary, and turned to the page of Agneris Labyrinth. He opened the first page, pressed the diary on the ground, and whispered for a while, but there was no movement. He was slightly disappointed and thought that his research had gone wrong, and then a consciousness emerged. Charlotte Mecklen found the ruins of the ancient Orc kingdom, Machupi, and met the requirements for arranging the first maze. Machupi is about to become a maze. Charlotte saw the first page of Agneris Labyrinth disappear with her own eyes, and then sensed the diary under her palm, which seemed to emit an invisible thing that expanded, eroding the ruins of the fortress of the ancient Orc kingdom inch by inch. The first thing to be eroded was the entrance to the fortress behind him, and based on this, it spread to the depths of Machupi. That consciousness emerged again. It will take 18 days for Machupi to complete the maze. During this period, you are not allowed to leave this place. Charlotte took a deep breath, put away the diary, turned around and walked to the gate of the fortress. Standing inside the gate, she shouted, "There is no problem inside. I also found a clean place to set up a camp and wait for Ferdinand Highway to pass." Lord Leo smiled slightly and said, "Okay." Although he had heard that there were some legends about Machupi, he was a high-level extraordinary person and had no fear. He took 2 servants and walked into the ruined fortress. Charlotte immediately sensed a thought: 3 more NPCs in the maze will increase the erosion progress by 1.5%. He was surprised and happy. He didn't expect there would be such a good thing. The adventurers followed him into the ruined fortress, and the thought kept giving reminders. The number of labyrinth NPCs increased by 15, and the erosion progress increased by 0.8%. The number of labyrinth NPCs increased by 21, and the erosion progress increased by 1.3%. The number of labyrinth NPCs increased by 34, and the erosion progress increased by 3.3%. The total number of labyrinth NPCs increased by 136, and the erosion progress increased by 16.5%. Charlotte took a long breath. He was finally sure that his research direction was correct. This fortress of the ancient Orc kingdom was extremely huge. At that time, it had a maximum of 270,000 troops stationed there. Although the maze was less than 20%, it was enough to prevent anyone who walked into it from getting out. Lord Leo was a high-level extraordinary after all, and his spirituality gave rise to vigilance. He looked around, but did not find any clues. He certainly could not have imagined that it was not that there was any danger lurking, but that they had entered the danger. Chapter 48, Monsters in the Depths of Machupi. The place Charlotte found was an Orc meeting hall, where Orc officers held meetings. It was indeed quite clean. The adventurers were quite satisfied with this camp and cleaned it up a little, tidying up a large area. Although Lord Leo was a little wary, he thought that he was too suspicious and was confident in his strength, so he didn't care. He asked 2 servants to spread a thick blanket and prepare to rest for a while to recover his energy. His 2 servants stood by their master very loyally, separating Lord Leo from the group of adventurers. No one noticed that Charlotte was missing. At this time, Charlotte had already gone deep into the Machupi fortress, standing alone on a deserted road, staring at the deeper fortress. This deserted road was the boundary of Machupi's maze. He could sense that because of Machupi's maze, some things were being forced into the depths of the fortress. There are some strange things in Machupi fortress. I wonder if I can capture a few and use them to strengthen the power of the labyrinth. Charlotte looked up some information at the University of Sheffield and consulted some professors, and figured out a little truth. The 2 evil gods should have lost some of their power during the battle, and merged it into the diary. If he could swallow the power contained in Agneris Labyrinth and Vampire Scroll before the 2 evil gods found it, and use it for himself, they would no longer be able to sense this part of the lost evil energy. Because this power no longer belongs to them. But if Charlotte fails to digest this part of the power within the limited time, Agneris and Karnstein will sense their lost evil energy again, and they will be able to lock the coordinates and come again. Although the time limit is tighter for Vampire Scroll, Charlotte is proficient in Bloody Glory, and it is not difficult for her to learn the secret method of the Adonis bloodline in the Vampire Scroll. The time limit of Agneris Labyrinth is longer, but there will be no extension. Once the time limit is up, Agneris will surely come back and will be unstoppable. Humans cannot resist evil gods. Only gods can fight against gods. This is the consensus of the old continent. Charlotte is more eager to master the 15 labyrinths. Charlotte is cautious and has not stepped out of the scope of the labyrinth, nor does she plan to take risks, but some existences that are secretly spying can't bear it. A whisper suddenly sounded in his ears, as if his dearest lover was calling him over. This whisper has infinite magic. Under the influence of the range, dozens of wild beasts rushed out from their hiding places, taking stiff steps, and hesitating towards the depths of Machupi. Charlotte pressed her eyebrows, hesitating whether to open insight. He was not sure what kind of monster was whispering, but he was not afraid. He thought, I have looked directly at the evil god twice. How can a mere charm magic affect my mind? Charlotte was sure that as long as she did not leave the scope of the maze, this monster hiding in the dark would not be able to do anything to her. Kyanan. I'm here. Just when Charlotte was sitting on the fishing platform, a lady with wavy blonde hair called out in a low voice and ran quickly into the darkness. Hannah, come back soon, Charlotte exclaimed, but it was too late. This young lady of average appearance had a good impression of him. But Charlotte did not think about having any close relationship with her. After all, he was still on the run. If the escape was over, he would have someone else to date. He did not expect Hannah to follow him and be tempted by the monster hidden deep in Machupi. Charlotte flew out the blood-sucking hand axe without hesitation. Under the control of the blood flame, the blood-sucking hand axe, which should have been flexible and free, lost its sense after flying dozens of steps, and sank into the darkness deep in Machupi, never looking back. Charlotte's heart was trembling. He had traveled through time and space in the famous seaside resort of Senes, Fars, and later returned to Strasbourg, the capital of the empire, where countless big men lived and even the gods watched. He had hardly encountered monsters or dangers. Except the time when he participated in the auction and was involved in the maze. And the time when the two evil gods were summoned. Well, I haven't encountered monsters, but I have faced evil gods. In short, Charlotte couldn't guess how terrifying those things in the depths of Machupi were, and what kind of evil power they possessed. Charlotte looked at the dark ruins of the fortress, whose foundation was unknown, and Miss Hannah, who had no shadow, and forced herself to suppress the urge to rush into the darkness to save people. Although he was already a 4th-level extraordinary person with 2 extraordinary weapons, he was still not good enough to face the monsters hidden in the depths of Machupi. If he rushed in to save people, he would definitely fail to save them and would have to sacrifice himself. Charlotte closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and used the Protagoras breathing method to suppress the reluctance that was rising up. The whispering continued. The invisible force eroded the darkness inch by inch, and the maze was spreading continuously. After dozens of minutes, Charlotte's spirit was slightly shocked, and he shouted, and a small blood-sucking hand axe flew up and fell into his hands again. At the same time, Charlotte also saw that Hannah had turned into a dry skeleton, just like Hannah, who had been weathered for hundreds of years. This poor female adventurer had all her life devoured by the monsters hidden in the darkness. On her face, which was wrinkled like old tree bark, there was still a slight sense of happiness, which was weird and terrifying. Near Hannah's body were dozens of animals that had died in the same weird way and turned into dry bones. Charlotte stretched out his hand and pressed, and countless oil was turned up, burying the bodies of Hannah and the animals. Within the scope of the maze, he could slightly manipulate the terrain, change the road, and even slightly distort the space. This is not a power that ordinary extraordinary people can master. This is the lost evil power of the overseas evil god, the god of the maze, Agmiris. After doing this, Charlotte turned his body and walked away without looking back. Although he had no feelings or close relationship with Hannah, he was still full of anger and swore in his heart, no matter what kind of ghost you are. After 18 days, I will find you out, expose you to the sun, and watch you turn into ashes. No. 15 days may be enough. The moment Charlotte turned around, the whispering stopped. More than a dozen vines crawled, passed through a certain intersection, and entered a desolate road. These vines that seemed to have life seemed to be pulled by a mysterious force. They were suddenly pulled straight and even made creepy squeaking sounds, but they could no longer be stopped until even the roots were pulled out and the whole thing was submerged in the maze. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 Anti-Space Sniper Rifle. Lord Leo opened his eyes, and 2 servants silently took out a kettle, put 3 pieces of blood bait in the water, and shook it vigorously, then poured it into a tin cup and handed it to the master. Lord Leo drank a cup of blood water, and was a little more alert. He whispered a short spell, and more than 10 small bats the size of a palm flew out of his body and soared into the sky. In the past 10 days, he would use this secret method every day to conduct reconnaissance in the distance. The 37 clans of vampires, each of which has different secret methods. As one of the 3 royal families, the Arthur family's basic secret method is the Blood Clan's truth word. The Arthur family is proficient in spells. This blood bat technique can be used to attack the enemy and can be transformed into countless bats to escape, but it is mainly used for reconnaissance. Lord Leo does not completely trust Charlotte. More than a dozen small bats flew out for 2 or 3 hours, but only 2 flew back. They entered Lord Leo's body, which made the Blood Clan Lord suddenly refreshed. He whispered, Ferdinand will pass by nearby. Kyannan didn't lie, he is still trustworthy. Charlotte said that Grand Duke Ferdinand would pass by Machupi, and it was not nonsense. When he was sorting out the documents for senior sister Mandelman, he happened to see a document about a newly imprisoned South Seraph restorationist who was arrested for conspiracy and riot. It mentioned which route Grand Duke Ferdinand would take to Strasbourg. Charlotte was about to go to Machupi at the time, so she mentioned that Grand Duke Ferdinand would pass by. Unexpectedly, she gained more trust from Lord Leo because of this. When Lord Leo sent bloodbats to scout the nearby situation, Charlotte was tactful and didn't come over, and continued to study the vampire secret scroll. When he saw Lord Leo's bloodbats coming back, he quickly put away the vampire scroll, walked over respectfully, and said, "Do you need me to send someone to scout?" Lord Leo shook his head and said, "The South Seraph restorers are already in ambush. If your people go over, they will alert the enemy. The two of us can go." Charlotte was relieved when she heard that she didn't need to send anyone, but she didn't expect Lord Leo to go with him. She was slightly surprised and said, "Me." Lord Leo smiled slightly, and said, "The South Seraph restorers are not powerful, and their assassination may not succeed. Our task is to add another shot when necessary. How is your marksmanship?" Charlotte hesitated for a moment, and replied, "It's okay. I can extinguish a candle within 20 steps. Lord Leo reached into his collar with his backhand and pulled out a huge gun. It is more than 1.5 picometers long, which is about 1.8 meters in metric system on Earth. The barrel is slightly thinner than the arm, but it is terrifyingly thick for a firearm. More than 90% of the parts have a metallic luster, and the whole body exudes a sense of ruggedness, solidity, and heaviness. Not only can it shoot, but it is also powerful as an infantry weapon. The old world did not have a sniper rifle branch, but it did have rifles. The design style of this rifle is completely different from that of the Blood Clan. It is obviously from the high-level alchemy workshop of the Fars Empire, and it is a special model. Lord Leo smiled and said, "You're getting a bargain. This is the signature product of the Firewheel Workshop. One of the 6 alchemy workshops in Fars, the anti-space long-range rifle. Space equipment is about storage, and anti-space is about hiding. You can hide it in any daily item, which is very easy to carry. This gun comes with a space magazine. When you take it out of the hidden item, its anti-space will be converted into a space magazine, but the space is not compatible, so when it is hidden in other items, the space magazine will be converted into anti-space and will spit out the ammunition. The bullets need to be carried with you at ordinary times. In addition, it can also convert various energies such as fighting spirit, blood energy, and magic power into bullets, but low-level extraordinary people can't fire a few shots, so it can only be used for emergency purposes. Its effective range is 3,700 picometers. Of course, unless it is an extraordinary shooter, no one can shoot that far and be accurate. This time I brought 2 anti-space long-range rifles, and this one is yours. When the time comes, you can also try to fire a few shots. Anyway, the Yugoslav restorationists will bear the blame. There are not many chances that you will not be hanged, even if you shoot a lord to death." Charlotte swallowed her saliva. At first, she thought that Lord Leo had space equipment on him. Otherwise, how could such a long and thick rifle be hidden in a mere piece of clothing? He was even more surprised when he heard the word anti-space. Anti-space extraordinary items are unique to this world. Magic equipment with anti-space characteristics can be hidden anywhere, which is equivalent to temporarily turning ordinary items into special space storage equipment. This characteristic is incredible and very creative. The magic equipment in the old world is not all cold weapons, but hot weapons are rare and more expensive. This anti-space long-range rifle is a magic equipment, plus the anti-space attribute. Its price will definitely not be lower than the Shamlansi spear in Louis Sami's hand. According to Lord Leo, this long-range rifle will not be taken back. What kind of good thing is this? But Charlotte was a time traveler after all, and she sobered up in just a few seconds. She thought to herself, if the weapon that killed Archduke Ferdinand was an anti-space long-range rifle, then whoever has this weapon is suspected of being the murderer. This is making me take the blame. There are really no good vampires. Bah. They are not human. Charlotte pretended not to have figured out the key point. She took the anti-space long-range rifle with a happy face and slapped it on the alchemical staff that she never left. The name of the anti-space long-range rifle was indeed well-deserved. This rugged rifle was integrated into the alchemical staff without any hindrance, making the staff only a little heavier. Lord Leo handed over another pack of bullets and said, This is a pack of specially made armor-breaking bullets. One bullet is enough to kill the Titan. Although Ferdinand is also a high-level extraordinary, he can't withstand a bullet. Charlotte took the bullet pack and opened it to take a look. The armor-breaking bullets are 7 or 8 times larger than ordinary bullets. There are only 20 bullets in this pack, but they are very heavy and can't be carried with him. He waved at an adventurer and said, "I remember you have an empty backpack." The adventurer took out a leather shoulder bag and took out the sundries inside. He said, "I changed to a new backpack and couldn't bear to throw it away. Except that it's a little old, it's still pretty sturdy." Charlotte put the bullet pack in and said, "Lord, let's go." Lord Leo smiled slightly and walked out of the Machupi fortress. He seemed to be guided by someone and walked faster and faster like an old horse who knew the way. Finally, he ran wildly. Chapter 50, The Empire's First Rose Blooming Like the Night. Charlotte held the magic alchemy staff but did not move. He was hesitating whether to shoot Lord Leo now. A thought entered his mind. Machupi has completed the maze. He smiled slightly and activated Bloody Glory, but deliberately suppressed it to the second level. He also followed out of the fortress, but was soon pulled far behind by Lord Leo. While he pretended to run desperately, he kept an eye on the sky and saw several black spots hovering in the sky. Charlotte thought to himself, that should be Lord Leo's bloodbath. With this thing to guide the way, no wonder he ran so fast. Every time Charlotte was about to lose him, Lord Leo would stop and wait for him. The two ran for more than 2 hours and heard the dense gunfire like popping beans from afar. Charlotte was quite worried. He didn't have the ability to cut bullets with a sword like Wells. Bloody Glory was activated to the limit. Although it could resist bullets, it couldn't last too long. This is also a common problem among low-level knights. When fighting alone, their fighting spirit can block a few or a dozen bullets. But when they are on the battlefield, with stray bullets flying from all directions, that little fighting spirit is not enough. Charlotte thought secretly, it would be great if I could master the blood flame transfiguration technique. If I turn into a ball of blood flame, the physical damage will be reduced to an extremely low level. It would be nice if I could master the agility technique and the spider technique. Maybe I could dodge the bullets. Lord Leo jumped onto a cliff, gazed intently for a while, and said to Charlotte, who was breathless and caught up with him, "The South Seraph restorers have failed." Charlotte looked down and saw that the two groups were fighting fiercely. He was a layman in war and could not tell what the battle situation was like. He asked, "Why do you know?" Lord Leo said lightly, "Ferdinand's 6 guards are not on the battlefield." After all, Charlotte was from the Principality of Behemoth, so she immediately realized that Archduke Ferdinand's 6 guards were very famous. It was said that they were all mid-level transcendents. The 6 of them could fight against even high-level transcendents together. Since they were not on the battlefield, they could only protect the Archduke and retreat. He said, "Since the mission has failed, there is no point in us staying here, so why not leave?" Lord Leo shook his head, jumped up, and shouted, "I'm following you." Charlotte looked up at the sky and saw those black spots. She knew that Lord Leo must have discovered something, so she had no choice but to follow him. Both of them were fast. Although Charlotte deliberately slowed down a little, she was still much faster than ordinary people. After turning a mountain pass, they heard shouting. Leo waved his hand, and Charlotte immediately lay on a stone next to her, took out the anti-space sniper rifle from the alchemy staff, and loaded the bullets into the space magazine. The space magazine of this anti-space sniper rifle is not small, but when hiding, the space magazine will turn into anti-space and spit out the ammunition. It is the limit for ordinary people to carry 20 rounds of magic armor-breaking bombs. Charlotte set up the gun and pretended to start looking for the target. Lord Leo nodded slightly, thinking, Kyanan is an excellent soldier, but for this war, he has to be sacrificed. This is for the future of Baron. Every citizen of Baron must have the awareness of sacrifice. More than 10 people were fighting in the valley, and 6 or 7 bodies were lying on the ground. The smaller party was trying their best to protect a little old man in his 50s. His silver hair was slightly messy, but his small tuft of beard was still clean and tidy. He was dressed very gorgeously and had no weapons on his body. He was squatting beside a female corpse with a panicked look on his face, wiping tears sadly, and refused to leave even though his men urged him desperately. Charlotte had seen Archduke Ferdinand during the festival and recognized this little old man. He was the master of the Principality of Behemoth and the target of the South Seraph restorationists. The female corpse lying on the ground was the Duchess of Ferdinand. It is said that when they were young, They had a sad and beautiful love story. The Archduke and his wife had a deep relationship and were well known in the Fars Empire. Charlotte muttered, "He's unwilling to leave his wife at this time. Archduke Ferdinand is really in love." Lord Leo chuckled and said, "The South Seraph restorers are still a little short of the fire. Jinan, you can help them. Aim at Ferdinand and send him on his way." Charlotte took a few deep breaths and familiarized herself with the gun in her hand. He hadn't touched it twice since he got it, and he couldn't make mistakes in what he was going to do next. After confirming that he could fire as long as he hooked his finger and pulled the trigger, Charlotte suddenly twisted his waist and pointed the anti-space sniper rifle in his hand at Lord Leo. He knew that there was only one chance, so he fired 3 shots without hesitation. The magic-breaking armor-breaking bomb cut through the sky, making a shrill whimper, and it was unknown how far it flew. Charlotte looked at Lord Leo, who suddenly jumped high for some unknown reason, and she was a little stunned. Lord Leo suddenly jumped up, and the 3 shots he had expected to hit all hit the air. Charlotte gritted her teeth and was about to draw out the blood rose to fight desperately, when she saw a ray of night rolling towards Lord Leo. The one who attacked was his respected senior sister Menelman Sumini. The first rose of the Empire was dressed in military uniform, and the rapier in her hand seemed to be condensed into one with the night, blooming in the air. Lord Leo was worthy of being a high-level extraordinary. He noticed the sword in advance. While struggling to jump into the air and fighting with Menelman, he also inadvertently avoided Charlotte's sneak attack. He didn't expect Charlotte to shoot at him, and thought that this loyal Imperial soldier helped him stop Menelman. Lord Leo's rapier didn't have time to transform into knight's lance, and he fought Menelman tooth and nail. After only one move of the 2 rapiers clashing, Lord Leo let out a long howl. He was stabbed in the chest, and the deep wound kept leaking blood energy. He hurriedly used the blood bat technique, and his whole body turned into hundreds of small bats. They gathered together and flew back the way they came. Before leaving, he did not forget to use the Blood Clan mantra to cast a charm spell, Jin Nan. "Help me stop this crazy woman." Charlotte was not affected at all. After all, he was a man who had looked directly into the eyes of the evil god. Resisting the charm spell was just a piece of cake. Just as he was about to fire 2 more shots to kill the 2 small bats, he heard Menelman's voice, echoing in his ears, saying, "You reacted so quickly just now. If you had coordinated with me a little more, this vampire from Byron would not have been able to get away." Charlotte was blushing. If he had acted earlier or a little later, he would have had a chance to seriously injure Lord Leo. Menelman's angle was different from Lord Leo's, so Lord Leo would misunderstand that Charlotte was helping him and shoot at Menelman, but Menelman would not do that. Menelman put the rapier into the scabbard at his waist and said, "Let's go and see Archduke Ferdinand." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.